Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening to the show today. The United States House of Representatives will take up and consider an article of impeachment against President Trump today. It is very, very ill-advised. I know that one of the people I respect the most in the Congress, Liz Cheney, is going to vote yes. I wish she would reconsider. It is ill-advised because it is unconstitutional to try a president who has left office. This is an op-ed, a column in the Washington Post posted yesterday afternoon by J. Michael Luttig. Judge Luttig served as a judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit from 1991 to 2006. He was, along with Chief Justice John Roberts, the two men considered by President George W. Bush to replace Justice Rehnquist as Chief Justice. They were both judges at the time. Not long thereafter, Judge Luttig left the bench, became a much respected general counsel and vice president of Boeing. He is now in retirement and wrote this piece. He rarely writes, but he writes on big legal issues, often for the Washington Post. I think you need to read it. I have tweeted it, and this is what it said. It appears, writes Judge Luttig, that even if the House of Representatives impeaches President Trump this week, the Senate trial on that impeachment will not begin until Trump has left office and President-elect Biden has become president on January 20th. That Senate trial would be unconstitutional. On Sunday, House Majority Whip James Clyburn said that while House Democrats would take up articles of impeachment this week against President Trump, the House might delay sending the Senate any articles passed by the House until after President-elect Biden's first 100 days in office. Biden proposed an alternative, under which the new Senate would begin immediately working on his legislative agenda and confirming his cabinet appointments in the mornings and conduct the impeachment trial in the afternoon. The sequencing of the House impeachment proceedings before Trump's departure from office and the inauguration of the new president, followed by a Senate impeachment trial perhaps a month later, raises the question of whether a former president can be impeached after he leaves office. The Constitution itself answers this question clearly. No, he cannot be. Once Trump's term ends on January 20th, Congress loses its constitutional authority to continue impeachment proceedings against him, even if the House has already approved articles of impeachment. Therefore, if the House of Representatives were to impeach the president before he leaves office, the Senate could not thereafter convict the former president and disqualify him under the Constitution from future office. The reason for this is found in the Constitution itself. Trump would no longer be incumbent in the office of President of the United States at the time the delayed Senate proceeding and would no longer be subject to impeachment conviction, that's in quotes, by the Senate, under the Constitution's impeachment clauses, which is to say that the Senate's only power under the Constitution is to convict or not an incumbent president. The purpose, text, and structure of the Constitution's impeachment clauses confirm this intuitive and common sense understanding. The very concept of constitutional impeachment presupposes the impeachment, conviction, and removal of a president who is, at the time of his impeachment, an incumbent in the office from which he is removed. Indeed, that was the purpose of the impeachment power, to remove from office a president or other civil official before he could further harm the nation from the office he then occupies. The plain text of the Constitution's several impeachment clauses confirm this understanding of this limit on Congress's impeachment power. For example, Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution reads, quote, "The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors." In the same constitutional vein, Article 1, Section 3 provides in relevant part, "Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States." It has been suggested that the Senate could proceed to try the former president and convict him in an effort to disqualify him from holding public office in the future. This is incorrect, because it is a constitutional impeachment of a president that authorizes his constitutional disqualification. If the president has not been constitutionally impeached, then the Senate is without the constitutional power to disqualify him from office. I repeat, If a president has not been constitutionally impeached, then the Senate is without the constitutional power to disqualify him from office. Some constitutional scholars take support for their view that the Congress can impeach a former president from two instances in which early Congresses impeached civil officials after they had resigned their public offices: the impeachments of Senator William Blount in 1797 and the impeachment of U.S. Secretary of War William Belknap in 1876. These congressional impeachment cases provide some backing for the argument that Congress can conclude that it has the power under the Constitution to impeach a former president. And Congress's understanding of its constitutional powers would be a weighty consideration in the ultimate determination whether the Congress does possess such authority. When and if the former president goes to court to challenge his impeachment trial as unconstitutional, Congress is sure to make its argument is based on these congressional precedents, as well as others, a case that would almost certainly make its way to the Supreme Court. In the end, though, only the Supreme Court can answer the question of whether the Congress can impeach a president who has left office prior to its attempted impeachment of him. It is highly unlikely the Supreme Court would yield to Congress's view that it has the power to impeach a president who is no longer in office when the Constitution itself is so clear that it does not. Judge J. Michael Luttig. It is a disaster to do this. If you are a Trump opponent, do you not understand that when President Trump brings his inevitable lawsuit against the constitutionality of the impeachment proceeding trial against him in the Senate, and he wins, what that will appear to do? It will appear to exonerate him. Think about that. Donald Trump is going to sue to stop the impeachment trial because he should sue. It's unconstitutional. And I would not have voted for the October 6th objections. I wrote that before they occurred. I would not have done it. I would not have signed my name to it. If I had signed my name to it, I would have changed my mind after the attack on the Congress. By the way, more than 130 arrests have occurred and more are coming. And if you were involved in being in the Capitol, you ought to retain criminal counsel and then have your counsel contact the FBI and have them arrange for your interview and possible charging and then your defense. Don't speak to the police yourself. Don't speak to the FBI yourself. Hire a criminal counsel and turn yourself in. They are going to find you. They're going to find everybody. It was an attack on the Constitution of the United States. It was. And you're likely guilty. There may be a couple of you who were swept along by the mob and forced just inside the building and left immediately. You might not be guilty. You might lack the requisite intent. But President Trump lacked the intent, as far as I can see, and as people have testified, and as the speech suggests, to be convicted of incitement, though people are going to impeach him today out of anger. Liz Cheney said he summoned the mob. He summoned a demonstration. He did not summon the mob. He summoned, in his mind, I believe, a great vast circling of the Capitol and a chanting, which is perfectly constitutional. The violence is unconstitutional. The crossing of the line is unconstitutional. It was an attack, a seditious insurrection, and it is one of the most serious things that's ever happened in the United States, and everyone who did it needs to be prosecuted. My gosh, we came close to having people murdered beyond the one police officer who was murdered. It was as close as 9/11 to destroying the Article I branch. But the impeachment ought not to proceed. It could have proceeded had it happened in the summer. Could have proceeded any other time, but not after a president leaves office. I've tweeted out Judge Luttig's essay. You can find him at Hugh Hewitt on Twitter. What do you think? 1-800-520-1234. Call me.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Birch Gold Group.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Law and order. I tell you what, it's law and order when you want to smear Republicans, but it's a peaceful protest when you're burning the city down for the devil.
Well, that's unfortunately, Lance, many of us know that exactly what you're saying, that is true. So the question is, what do we do? In other words, will we have the ability going forward to keep the republic? I mean, that's the question. I have said that if Biden gets in, either way, fraudulently or legitimately, he and his folks are going to take us down a path that destroys our ability to recover.
It is important that we, in our movement, recognize we are a movement, and that Donald Trump is willing to still lead that movement. And that movement is going to redefine politics in the Republican Party. And that movement is going to damage the Democrats. And what we must beware of is what happened yesterday cannot ever happen again. We can't give them the gift of having us for a moment do anything that is unrighteous, because they could be unrighteous all day and will never call themselves out. But if they bait us into participating in something they do, it's us that's going to get in trouble. It's like the kid in school who knows how to do something bad, and it's always when it turns around, their straight face, and the goofy kid who participated, that's the one the teacher caught. That's us. So we got to start with, and I mean this sincerely, no violence, because they would love to come for the guns of lawful people, just like they want to come for the freedom of speech of God's most righteous people.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
I'm watching this thing, and I'm looking at this horrific scene of how these people breach the Capitol building, hoping nobody gets hurt, hoping the officers are able to maintain order, hoping there's no destruction of valuable, artifacts and things like that in that building. How this looks but from terrorists, they're saying how easy it is to breach. That's what I'm thinking about. It never occurred to me to go, you know what, Larry? I wonder what would have happened had these people been largely black people. I guess I had other things on my mind, but if you want to play that game, let's play that game. Holding in my baby brown libertarian fingers, article from the Wall Street Journal, April 27, 2016, headline: "This study found race matters in police shootings, but the results may surprise you." And the article, very detailed. I urge you to go get it yourself. We have it up on LarryElder.com. And it goes through a very thorough analysis of how studies, analyses, research back to the 70s show the police more hesitant, more reluctant to pull the trigger on black suspects than on white suspects. Washington State, over a series of years, 3 studies, all of which reached the same conclusion. Officers were 3 times more hesitant to pull the trigger against a black suspect than a white suspect. So, you want to play this game about what would have happened had the protesters been black? The likelihood is they would have pulled back even more, and the building would have been trashed more.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
This notion of, you're crazy if you believe anything went awry, when, according to Congressman, a North Carolina congressman. Yes, here we go. Dan Bishop. There were 385 pre-election lawsuits to change election laws. Even if the counting were honest,
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I'm devoting this hour to the men and women of the Congress who are driving to the Congress right now and have to decide whether or not to vote for the article of impeachment. I urge them to vote no. It is an unconstitutional exercise. I would not have voted for the January 6th objections. I have said from November 3rd forward, Joe Biden is the president-elect. He won. I do not see fraud. I have never seen fraud. I believe that 60 lawsuits are definitively asked and answered. There was no conspiracy. The voting machines were fine. That's all hooey. President lost by 46,000 or 42,000 votes in 3 states because of bad choices. He's justly angry at polling that misled people as to the state of opinion in the United States. His campaign made bad choices, but he lost. And I have advised everyone of that. And I advised him to open up Trump 2024 and run again, though that is obviously not going to happen now, or if it happens, it will fail. But he is not eligible for impeachment and removal since he's leaving in a week. 1-800-520-1234. Blue Ridge, Georgia. Ray. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, you. How are you?
I'm good. What do you think?
I think I agree with what you read. Agree with that lawyer or the judge. I think it's going to make Trump a cult figure once he does win his lawsuit. But will he have enough steam to run in 2024? Probably. He can disrupt a whole lot of stuff.
Well, the certainly people who look, I do not believe people have thought through the consequences of the president winning the lawsuit against impeachment, and they ought. Especially those who oppose him. It will make him stronger. And those who support him should actually be making the argument I am making and then telling people what's going to happen is he's going to be vindicated, that he was not responsible for the mob.
Right. I agree. But I think Nancy Pelosi has tunnel vision right now.
She's seeing red. She's blind with anger and rage, and it goes back 5 years, and it's personal, and it's exactly what the Constitution is. The Senate is designed to cool partisan passions. I don't know that he'd be impeached at the end of the trial anyway, but he'll stop the trial. I believe he'll have standing to stop the trial. We will see. Thank you, Ray. Michael in Bangor. How are you, Michael?
John,
Good morning. You're on.
I just thought.
Michael, you're breaking up.
Oh,
Yeah, we can't hear you, Michael. Sorry. 1-800-520-1234. You've got to be clear sell. Let me talk about the markets because it's, we'll see. I don't know if impeachment's going to hurt the markets today or not. 1-800-520-1234 if you want to call back, Michael. This is brought to you by Birch Gold. I've been urging people to always diversify and to have gold in their whole portfolio in their retirement account between 10 and 25%, especially if you're on the verge of retirement. You really ought to have a complete anchor against hyperinflation. Now, we're going to print a lot of money under President Biden. We printed a lot of money under President Trump. I think the national debt's going to hit $30 trillion within 4 years now. And what's that going to do to the value of the dollar? I don't know, but value of gold is not going to be affected by the amount of American money in currency. Gold is at 1853 this morning. The 10-year Treasury is up another tick to 1.14%. Yesterday, the Dow went up 60, the NASDAQ 36, and the S&P 1. Overseas, Japan went up, and England is up. Germany's down a little bit. And light crude remains climbing at 53 because the inflationary impacts of the stimulus that has flooded the world. The world is indifferent to Donald Trump leaving in a week. They just know he's leaving. And so I believe the market will not be affected by the improvident impeachment of the president today, as will happen. The Democrats are going to do it. But I am just hopeful the Senate comes to its senses and doesn't do it. In fact, I would love for some Democrats to stand up. Liz Cheney said she's going to vote for it. I think that's a mistake, and I really, really admire and will not stop admiring Liz Cheney. People can make mistakes. The Constitution here does not permit the trial of the president, so it is an improvident gesture. But the markets don't care. What I care about, why the reason gold is going up, the reason light crude is going up, is because the stimulus will take effect as these vaccines roll out, America. And boy, are they rolling out. It's working much better than it did 2 weeks ago, and it will continue to accelerate. Don't go anywhere. 1-800-520-1234 connects you to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
This notion of, you're crazy if you believe anything went awry when, according to Congressman, a North Carolina congressman. Yes, here we go. Dan Bishop. There were 385 pre-election lawsuits to change election laws. Even if the counting were honest, do you know how much cheating went on by changing the laws? And over the course of time, dropping election day as election day to election month, and the sending out of ballots. And what's the word that they have for bundling? Is that the word? Bundle? What is the word? Harvest, yeah. Half this country doesn't believe in any of its institutions, and they're right. I'm in that half. If you send your child to any school that teaches the 1619 Project, you have made the choice to have your child lied to about your country. 100% lie. So my heart breaks for you because you have other things to do in life other than to also be your children's teachers, or at least to organize their teaching, as in homeschooling. Maybe you could find a good school that actually teaches truth and not a left-wing school. Maybe, and if that would be the best.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
You know what? I saw Ron DeSantis say something the other day that really, really got to me. He said the highlight of my life, of my job, of my existence is to have people come up to me now and with tears in their eyes and say, thank you, Governor DeSantis. Thanks to you, my family still has an income. I still have a job. Thanks to you, I've been able to survive this horrific year. You should see New York. Oh, my goodness. It's terrible what New Yorkers have experienced and are continuing to experience. And believe me, look at the comparisons of New York and Florida. It's very apt. So here's Governor DeSantis at that press conference where a CNN reporter was strutting around like a peacock trying to embarrass him and talk over him. And he completely bested her with this exchange.
What has gone wrong with the rollout of the vaccine that we've seen phone lines jammed, websites crashed?
There's a lot of demand. I mean, I think at the end of the day, excuse me.
If I could finish my question.
You just said what has gone wrong, so I'm answering the question.
If I could complete the question, though.
So you're going to give a speech or you're going to ask a question?
We've seen websites crash and also senior citizens waiting overnight for the vaccine.
Where was that at?
We've seen it in Duval, Broward, Orange, and Lee.
Why was there a big line? Did you investigate why?
Could you tell us why?
Because we distributed vaccine to hospitals, and the hospital said, first come, first serve. If you show up, we'll do it.
See, I mean, these CNN clowns aren't interested in any kind of answers. She doesn't care about a response. She wants to posture and behave more like an activist than a reporter.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
The last year we have seen BLM Incorporated rioters burn down the cities of our country with very little to any of arrests happen. We saw Antifa go after conservatives and kill a conservative in the street of Portland. We saw the Russia hoax and 0 people be held accountable to it. From Peter Strzok to Lisa Page to Brennan to Clapper. We saw this entire voter fraud nonsense unfold. We saw the Ukrainian impeachment hoax earlier in the year. Hillary has never been even close to being indicted for what she did from the Clinton Foundation or from Uranium One. How about Hunter Biden? You think Hunter Biden's ever going to serve serious time in jail? How about the lockdowns? I don't trust any institution that exists anymore in our country, and you should neither. I don't trust many of our leaders that legislate. I don't trust our corporations. I don't trust our universities. And I don't trust the media. Now, that's not to say
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt talking with you at 1-800-520-1234 about whether or not the president ought to be impeached today, tried next week. I agree with Judge Michael Luttig in the Washington Post. I've read his article already. I will read it again in a moment. Detective Tom, how are you, my friend, on a bridge somewhere in Oakland?
That's correct. Actually, I can see San Quentin driving in here just to let you know what I think. Okay, no, obviously, you know, he should not be impeached, should not be censored. Just curious, you know, you're ahead of the curve on this stuff. What is the, you know, we're all fixed, you know, with polling and stuff like that. Has there been any polling to go ahead and indicate what the American public thinks about the Democrats going ahead and pulling an article of impeachment?
Well, I know that the Republicans polled are more than 4-1 against it. Democrats are overwhelmingly for it, and the middle is split. I believe it is slightly in favor of impeachment right now, but of course, polling didn't distinguish itself when it said that Donald Trump was going to lose Wisconsin by 17 points, and in fact, he almost won it. That's, by the way, what I cite to people as being the thing that makes me angriest about the election, not the absentee voting in Pennsylvania, but the suppression polling by major news organizations.
Or the 100,000 votes by the truck driver from New York to Pennsylvania, but we won't get into that.
Yeah, I don't believe that, but go ahead.
Okay, all right. He signed the affidavit, but, you know, whatever.
Yeah, so he can go to jail. I don't believe it. How many affidavits have you seen that were lies, Detective?
Affidavit?
Yeah.
If I'm getting a witness to go ahead and give me a signed sworn affidavit, I make that individual perfectly clear what the ramifications are if he's not completely truthful.
I agree, but how many of them are filed that are not completely truthful?
In my cases, not very many.
Not in that. You're pretty sly.
I'm not going before a judge with an arrest warrant.
I know you aren't, but I'm just saying the courts are full of affidavits, many of which are not true. Not because even that people intentionally lied; they are simply not telling the whole truth, or they are not.
Well, I think you're dismissing it without.
Okay, we're off on a rabbit hole.
Okay,
we're off on a rabbit hole.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to get there. Okay, another thing. All right, what is the status? You said 145 people have been arrested for
130.
130. Is there any additional information? Because I'm not following it as closely as you are. On the shooting by the plainclothes officer of the Air Force vet, and
I have not seen that except this morning an article that she had in fact knocked in the window. There were members in the house when she did so and attempted to enter. I believe it'll be a justified shooting when they review it. You know, they were genuinely. If that very brave police officer had not faked the morons into following him, they would have broken into a Senate occupied by senators, one of whom was armed, Senator Cotton, who is a Ranger. What would have happened then?
Again, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there are strict procedures in terms of what is, you know, when you can use deadly force.
True.
You know, threat of loss of life, threat of fear of you being killed.
They may have a different standard, right? They may be charged. If you've got the vice president in there and your Secret Service, I don't know who did the shooting, but if you got the vice president and your Secret Service, your standard of shooting is going to be higher.
And I agree with that. Okay, is there anything on the homicide of the slain officer in the county?
Yeah, they know who did it, and they're looking for him. I haven't seen anyone other than the individual they're looking for being pursued, but of course that will take quite a lot of time to figure out if there's felony murder charges there.
Okay, and stop telling these suspects, and that's who they are, to lawyer up so we can go ahead and get a chance to go ahead and talk to them, all right?
That's an interesting choice. I believe that the Constitution exists so that people, I always tell people, your friendly neighborhood law enforcement is your friendly neighborhood law enforcement when you need defense. But when the FBI knocks on your door, thank them very much and don't speak to them.
Oh, I wouldn't talk to the FBI at gunpoint anyway, and I tell them that all the time. But that's for different reasons. Okay, and one last thing. I'm taking the Chiefs and the points. What's the number?
The Browns are going to win, my friend.
You're stated in your denial. Oh, one last thing. You do know that the GOP is entering an internecine war here.
Yeah, they are. But I think it will also be over rather quickly. What they haven't planned on, Tom, let's say you hated Trump. Let's say you're out there and you hate Donald Trump. When he wins the case against the impeachment trial, he will emerge vindicated.
Yeah. But Jonah Goldberg and Bill Kristol and Stephen Hayes, by the way, nice thread on that. I will go ahead and still retain their position, and that's fine. They're out right now, and they're desperately trying to get in. So, my position is to block.
They won't be in. They're not coming back. They're not coming back. That's why I think Stephen's mad at me, even though I'm not mad at Stephen. I don't get mad at anyone. I think a lot of people have been disintermediated from any kind of influence and power for the rest of their careers because the Democrats aren't going to take them.
Oh, no. They'll use them for what they want, and then they'll discard them. All right.
And I will be a partner in the continued appreciation of people like Jonah, but those who cross the line, I will not attempt to help. I think Jonah has a lot to contribute.
You mean like Bolton, like John Bolton?
I won't name any names. You'll never hear people on the show again who used to be on the.
Thank you.
All right.
That's
be
right.
well.
A non-denial denial.
Yeah. An affidavit that you don't trust. Thank you, Tom. Go protect our city in Oakland. Good man. Gary in Pennsylvania. Hello, Gary.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm so great we beat the Steelers.
Oh, yeah.
I get to say that for a year.
I don't blame you.
I get to say it forever. We took down Big Ben in Pittsburgh in the year with no safeties, with no guard, with no coach. We still beat the Steelers. It's the only game that matters forever.
Yes, it does.
Go ahead.
Yes, I don't think the president should be impeached. He says to the point what he says, but I think it's the people's actions that's doing all this crap, and they're just blowing everything out of proportion.
I do not believe he intended for them to storm the Capitol. If he did, I would have summoned the Congress back and impeached him.
Right. Yep.
Because it's sedition, and the people who went in faced jail time. But I discriminate between, and because I've talked to some of the people on this show who were there, who heard the speech. Right. I did not see it myself. I've read it. I did not see it. I had no idea it was going on until 4:00 in the afternoon. But the argument is just threadbare. He will not be convicted, and it will be stopped because it's unconstitutional. Thank you, Rick. Brian in Pittsburgh. Brian, I may have missed Sunday night's game. Who won, the Browns or the Steelers? Must have been the Steelers, right? They had all the players, and the Browns didn't have their coach or anybody.
Now, hats off to the Cleveland Browns. I'm happy for you and them, no doubt about it.
If people are watching on my YouTube channel, I've been wearing my Browns fleece all week because, we're going to beat the Chiefs next. Go ahead, Brian. Should the president be impeached?
Well, I'm following your legal argument, which I appreciate. We are ruled by the Constitution, and I'm following your warning that if he is impeached, he will file suit and further empower himself in the future and be able to run. I'm tracking all that, Hugh. And the gentleman, Tom, the police officer, very articulate. Hugh, it may not have been legally wrong for Trump and his role in the mob and horrific attack on the Capitol, but morally, he is culpable. Why? It was based on stop the steal. He fed that monstrously. While the attack's going on, he's tweeting, well, they stole it from us. Now, I get your legal argument. I do. Absolutely. There has to be an outrage from Republicans. I don't hate Trump. I've called you. I softened my stance on him.
Let me interrupt, Brian. There will be a motion of censure offered today by Congressman Gallagher and others. It is an appropriate and constitutional exercise that people can debate the president's course of conduct, which has become exceedingly more challenging to order over the course of 2 months. I think it really spiraled in January. That is appropriate and constitutional, a motion of censure, if people want to vote for that. But I begin by asking, ought we, if you swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, and I have sworn it and you may have sworn it, ought you not to uphold the Constitution?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But what I need to hear from, and I'll say you as well, the moral outrage. I'm listening over these past days, and I'm listening to dear fellow citizens, and they're dismissing Trump's role. It's almost like it never happened. Hugh, that attack was horrific. I'm watching the footage last night with my wife. They're beating a police officer with American flags.
And they killed a police officer with a fire extinguisher. I do not, and they threatened they could have had a mass slaughter of the People's House and the People's Senate. I understand that. And just after 9/11, I was talking last night with a former member. The most inspiring Congress has ever been is after the attack on D.C. on 9/11, Democrats and Republicans came together on the steps of the Capitol and saying, God bless America. That was the same sort of attack on the Capitol. There is no difference between the men and women who killed the police officer and menaced the members of Congress than the Al-Qaeda terrorists. No difference. So, how much more outraged can you be? However, I ask you this question. It's just a law school exercise. If they had had a demonstration after the president spoke, after they went up there and they circled the Congress for hours chanting, stop the steal, stop the steal, stop the steal, and the Congress went ahead, had the objections, it failed just like it did, and the president-elect is still the president-elect, would there be a motion to impeach today? No, because it's not about that. It's about the people who broke into the Congress. So what Trump intended was a political theater that went awry. And he may be civilly liable for wrongful death, but it is not seditious.
I hear you. You're brilliant. You're a constitutional expert, and I'm with you. The Constitution rules over us. No man, no woman. I get it, but we need the moral outrage against what Trump has devolved into. It is morally outrageous how he at least
as Secretary Clinton said to me, you can hold two thoughts. You can hold that thought and the thought that the Constitution should be honored. Hey, Brian, I thank you. I really do. You're a great caller. Call back. I had a couple of my go-to callers, Tom and Brian, today, and I appreciate that. Time for ReliefFactor.com. Got to go see the podiatrist today. I think I told you. I think I broke a little bone in my foot on Saturday's 10-miler. And I don't know what you do about that. I've done it before, but that's not Relief Factor's fault. In fact, Relief Factor got me into a position where I can do 1,103 miles last year. Now I'm 64, about to be 65, and so I trundled 1,103 miles last year because of ReliefFactor.com. Because you get old, you get achy. Minor aches and pains accompany aging. You cannot avoid that. They accompany exercise. You cannot avoid that if you're doing good exercise. And you've got to, as Tim Cook of Apple said, we will discover immobility as the new cancer in the next few years. Get out and move and get ReliefFactor.com to make it easier on you. The starter pack of 3 weeks is $19.95. More of your calls after this. Stay tuned, America.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Birch Gold Group.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
We only deal in the facts. And Katie Pavlich has given them to us. Yes, there were thousands of peaceful Trump supporters that marched to Capitol Hill and that surrounded the building. There were others that broke the law and that gained entry to that building and did damage to that building. But some of the people who were there, disguised as Trump supporters, were in fact BLM and Antifa. Will we ever get to the bottom of what really happened? We are 12 days away from Biden taking over and his installation of Merrick Garland as the Attorney General of the United States. So no, don't hold your breath for some official, judicial conclusion or even a prosecution of these individuals, because that's not in their interests. BLM is peaceful. Didn't you know that? Antifa doesn't exist. It's just an idea. But as long as we have great people like Katie Pavlich and my colleagues at Town Hall and at Salem, we will give you the truth. Because that's why we exist. That's why we are here. That's why this radio show broadcasts to you every day of the week for 3 hours. Now more than ever, it's crucial that you share this information, that you propagate the knowledge you receive from this show.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
So now me at 27, I can now play historian. So let me tell you what's about to happen, okay?
Sure.
When Democrats have unified government, they're going to reach too big, and they're going to fail with a lot of it. We now have to pinpoint, though, what fights matter most. Number one, the continuation of the Electoral College. Number two, no more seats on the Supreme Court. Number three, no new states. Number three is the one that we really got to look out for. So if we're smart, we should go ask Joe Manchin right now on the record, do you support adding new states to the union? I have a whole very provocative argument that I think that Joe Manchin should run for Senate Majority Leader and all the Republicans should support him, therefore not allowing Chuck Schumer becoming Senate Majority Leader. So I'm going to come out with that publicly today. I guess I'm breaking it exclusively, Eric. I did come up with the idea, but it's actually so patently obvious. But then here's the other thing that's going to happen, Eric, is that we're going to start to get It's going to get worse before it gets better. They're going to crack down on us like never before. There's going to be a lot of indictments, investigations, deplatforming, censoring, loss of hope. And then things will, then we're going to have to rally and we're going to have to find some momentum. But
welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I want to take a couple more calls on this, even my old friend Yoni, but you're going to have to be quick, Yoni. A lot of people have to be heard from. Welcome, my friend. How are you?
I'm good, and I want to congratulate you on your stance on this, because you and I are on the same page, which I didn't think we would have been.
Well, you know, it's nice to be congratulated, but it's because you've been persuaded by the same facts I have, not because we like being together. We often are not.
Yeah, no, it's like the demonstration up until the point in time they breached the Capitol. That's perfectly fine. I have no problem with it. You breach the Capitol, you enter into new grounds.
By the way, since you were part of the Israeli Defense Services, is the shooting justified of the demonstrator from what you have seen?
I got real problems with it, I'm going to be honest. And I'll tell you why. She had broken the window, but she hadn't breached the window. And my bigger problem, because the other thing, you forget that for about 10 years, I was also a deputy sheriff in the United States. Coming up behind her was a stick of tactical officers that were right behind her.
Yeah, but the officer may not have been able to see that, right? I mean, there'll be an investigation. May I ask you, since I would have asked Detective Tom this, I'm going to ask you this. Why did no officer think to fire into the ceiling?
Because in a reasonable country, you don't fire in the ceiling because we understand that bullets will go potentially through the ceiling and hit somebody on the other side, or if you're outside.
Well, that's not going to happen in the Congress, my friend. In the Congress, it's built of granite it's just not going to pass through a floorboard. Those are...
Then you run the risk of ricochet.
Okay, I was wondering if that was it, because, the classic gunshot that everyone says, whoa, they got a gun. I just wondered why that did not happen.
I'm going to give you a bit of history that most people don't even know. When Arafat for the first time went into the Gaza Strip, they were shooting AK-47s into the air, and it resulted in several hundred dead people because gravity turns that bullet.
Oh, yeah, that happens in L.A. when idiots fire off on the 4th of July weapons.
Yeah, no, you don't fire a gun up into the air. It's a stupid thing to do. You don't fire it inside of a building as a warning shot. I tell people all the time, if you're going to shoot a gun, you shoot it for real. If you
another question. You've done perimeter security before.
Absolutely.
What were they thinking? I mean, we would not be having this disastrous debate today had the Capitol Police been prepared and supported. Doesn't justify anything. It's just a question as to where was the failure?
Well, what I have heard, and the Capitol Police ask for assistance, and apparently both the House and the Senate have their own security, which has veto power over what the Capitol Police want to do, and they denied it because of optics.
Okay, I don't know. I also know Mayor Boucher's got a role here, so you don't know either. Okay, quick, you got one comment because I want to get two more people in, Yoni.
I'm going to say this to both the major parties in the United States of America. Tread very carefully, because in my undergraduate poli-sci degree, I had to learn the following for a test, and it stuck with me through everything I've done in my life. When the government fails to address issues that are salient to the masses, in the end, the masses will revolt. Don't go crazy on us. Let's seek to repair the country. But if we keep doing the 2021 book burning like the high tech is doing, and we're banning people off airplanes because they say they like President Trump, we're in dangerous territory that could have ramifications.
I agree. I think people need to step back and calm down. Thank you, Yoni.
Absolutely.
Let me go to George in Houston. Hello, George. What do you think? Got to be quick.
Yeah, good morning, Hugh. I think you quote 80 some odd cases that were dismissed. You looked at them?
60.
Dismissed because of merit or standing?
Some on both. Lots of merit decisions, lots of procedural decisions.
Any numbers? Lots? Don't say anything to me. 50-50?
No, I would guess probably 80-20. But there were. I understand that people are saying there were no discussion of the merits of the allegations. That is not true. By the way, standing is itself a meritorious argument, a very important meritorious argument. The person who ought to have been challenging the counting was President Trump. His legal team failed him miserably.
I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what they presented, the facts were not there, or that they just say you don't have a right to argue this.
Both of those things happened because, like, Lynn Wood has no standing. Lynn Wood has zero standing. But the president had standing everywhere and had the opportunity, was unprepared, and hired the wrong people. George, thank you. Mark in Dallas, what do you think?
I think that morning, Hugh, I think that when we should not impeach, I am a conservative, religious American who backed Trump, but I do believe that if you wreck your car, you may go out and get it fixed, but that doesn't mean you're going to be satisfied with it forever. You're always going to be looking at the damage that's been done as a fault. I think the Republican Party needs to say, hey, look, we have a problem here. Trump is the leader of the free world. I've lost confidence in him. I do think, though, we have a figurehead in the background, Pence, Vice President Pence, that might be good for the policies that the Republicans are trying to put in.
That's next week's conversation, but I do appreciate your call. Today's conversation, please go read Judge Luttig, my friends in the Congress. Please. It is not constitutional what you're proposing to do. I'll be right back. Richard Haass of the Council on Foreign Relations next.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
So now me at 27, I can now play historian. So let me tell you what's about to happen, okay?
Sure.
When Democrats have unified government, they're going to reach too big, and they're going to fail with a lot of it. We now have to pinpoint, though, what fights matter most. Number one, the continuation of the Electoral College. Number two, no more seats on the Supreme Court. Number three, no new states. Number three is the one that we really got to look out for. So if we're smart, we should go ask Joe Manchin right now on the record, do you support adding new states to the union? I have a whole very provocative argument that I think that Joe Manchin should run for Senate Majority Leader and all the Republicans should support him, therefore not allowing Chuck Schumer becoming Senate Majority Leader. So I'm going to come out with that publicly today. I guess I'm breaking it exclusively, Eric. I did come up with the idea, but it's actually so patently obvious. But then here's the other thing that's going to happen, Eric, is that we're going to start to get it's going to get worse before it gets better. They're going to crack down on us like never before. There's going to be a lot of indictments, investigations, deplatforming, censoring, loss of hope. And then things will, then we're going to have to rally and we're going to have to find some momentum. But for anyone who now says, well, the country is over, it's lost, then go to Paris. Okay. I have no time for you right now. Okay. I'm going to fight for every single inch of this country. And if you're all of a sudden going to be these people that there's a direct connection of the people that were dealing in hopi, like give me the hopium. And now the people that want nothing to do with it. It's over. It's done. Fine.
Yeah.
Go to Brussels. Okay. I want nothing to do with that. We got to fight.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
I watch a lot of CNN and MSNBC, Haass, so you don't have to. I got the scars to prove it. Let me tell you something. Trump talked about the rally. He wanted people to come to D.C. Nobody said, uh-oh, 5 people are going to be killed because these guys are going to assault the Capitol building. Oh, my goodness. Nobody said that. The most severe, pathological, hateful Trump hater never said that. Nobody said that. How many Trump rallies have there been? When have you seen this? That's why they weren't ready. Didn't think it was going to happen. Hadn't happened before. And there is some evidence that some of the people there were outside agitators, infiltrators. Some. Don't know. We're still sorting that out. But at least one guy is a known Antifa Black Lives Matter activist, violent guy from Utah. One of them. But people didn't anticipate this. Because heretofore, for the most part, the Trump rallies have been peaceful. And most of the people, again, there were peaceful. All of a sudden, the media has forgotten that term that they love so much called mostly peaceful. They've also forgotten that term they love so much called defund the police. Why weren't the police there? Why wasn't there more of a police presence? Remember that, was it the mayor of Baltimore who said, we gave the rioters space to destroy.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
You can concentrate, and should, on the terrible events of yesterday. But if that's all you think about, you will do the country no service. This country is completely divided. Something I've said we've been in a civil war. And I said for so long, we're in a civil war and only one side is fighting. For the last 4 years, Republicans have fought. Among the other consequences of yesterday's mob, and it was a mob in the Capitol, is the way in which, at least for the time being, history has a time of leveling things. The Donald Trump legacy has been smeared truly beyond recognition. I don't know whether the results. I have had the same position the entire time. I use the word agnostic. I don't know. The circumstantial evidence of cheating and the 100% moral defense of cheating that would accompany almost anyone on the left, and would have to. I will make the argument once again. If you believe that one of the two candidates is a fascist, is a dictator, is a white supremacist racist, why would you not cheat if you could to prevent that person from being president? I would.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
I mean, there's a lot of Republicans, oh, okay, thank you, CNN, rush to CNN. You shouldn't give CNN the time of day. Why? Anybody you see on CNN or any of these anti-Republican, anti-conservative outlets, that speaks volumes. It speaks volumes. If you're cozying up to the media elites, you are telling the world who you really are. Again, I love this this comment I saw on social media last night. It gave me a little bit of hope after a despondent evening. Fun fact, the ruling elite are terrified of an angry general populace. Listen, they despise people like Ron DeSantis because he stands up to jerks like that lady.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
I was watching a certain congressman who I won't name, a former congressman, who 5 or 6 times on television right now, he just said, I'm so surprised to see this. I'm so stunned to see this. You can be saddened to see it, like I am. But if you're surprised that you're seeing this, then you have done an awful job governing and legislating. This should not be a surprise to anyone that actually understands what is happening in this country. And this is beyond politics at this moment. This is beyond Republican and Democrat. This is a multi-institutional problem that is happening in America. So I want to get into this as we lead. We're waiting for the president of the Senate, the vice president, to reconvene the session. As we promised you, we're going to be covering this live tonight, and we covered it all throughout the day. What drove those people to scale the walls of Congress today, of which I don't support? But why did they do that? The sloppy and the lazy analysis that is being given is because President Trump told them to do that. That's wrong. That's not true. First of all, he didn't tell them to do that. But that's a simpleton argument. They did that because they don't trust their system. That's why. I just heard Jonathan Turley on Fox News, who I think is a very smart guy, and he
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to my 400 affiliates. It is great to have you with me on this important day in American history. I am joined by Richard Haass. Dr. Haass is, of course, the chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations, the president, actually. He's the author of A World in Disarray, Foreign Policy Begins at Home, many influential articles, former distinguished public servant. Good morning, Richard. Welcome back.
Morning, Mr. Hewitt. How are you?
I'm terrific. Well, actually, I'm not terrific. I've seen much better times in the United States. Richard, before I go to your article, President the Destruction, and we've got 15 minutes here, so we have a chance to walk into it. I want to begin, as I began, with Secretary of State Pompeo yesterday. By the way, did you see that interview that I did with the Secretary yesterday?
I read it.
Okay, good. Same thing I asked him. The Global Times editorial threatens a crisis in the next 10 days, even a storm. They will teach Taiwan secessionists a lesson, nail Pompeo and the likes to the pillars of shame. Do you fear a major incident in the short term with China?
I can't rule it out. I don't think it's likely. It's not the first time in recent years they've used this kind of muscular rhetoric. But look, let's take a step back. I think what the Secretary of State announced over the weekend, basically more normal interaction with Taiwan, in and of itself isn't, to me, wrong. What I think is wrong is to do it absent the context where we can provide the kind of deterrence and, if need be, defense of Taiwan working with our allies. So it was all symbol, what we did the other day, without really building a much safer environment for Taiwan. And the stakes there include Taiwan, but obviously include our relations with Japan, South Korea, and everybody else. That's my problem with what Mike Pompeo did. I don't know I doubt, I guess, that China is going to act out, but I do think they'll do something. Could be in the economic area, could be some ships could be in the area, airplanes could challenge airspace. That basically a station identification to let Taiwan know, don't use this as an excuse to move in the direction of independence.
Now, also at the same time, Iran's Navy has begun a short-range missile drill in the Gulf of Oman, not unprecedented but provocative, and they've seized a freighter. Are they likely to do anything in the next week that is requiring an American response?
I doubt it, only because you've got the Iranian elections in 5 or 6 months. More important, I think they want to see what the new Biden administration does, and I don't think they want to necessarily preclude some changes that they might actually welcome. The only really hard thing dealing with Iran, unlike China, if China wants to do something, or if it happens, it's because Xi Jinping ordered it.
Yes.
With Iran, you've got divided authority, and if things could happen because the Revolutionary Guard do something or some militia do something. It's a little bit trickier with Iran making predictions because you have such a distribution of authority.
You're right. The Secretary of State noted yesterday President Xi will give the order if anything happens in Taiwan. Okay, so here's the key question before we go to President the Destruction. If there is a provocation, a significant, either by the Chinese or by the Iranians in the next week, will President Trump be justified in responding if indeed time is of the essence?
If there's a provocation, I think he's justified in reacting. Then you have to look at what's the scope of the provocation, what's the scope of the reaction. But he's still the president for the next week. We've only got one president at a time, not two, but also not zero.
No, I love that. That's exactly what I wanted people to hear before anything happens. Now, the walk up to President the Destruction, Richard, do you think the Abraham Accords are a good thing?
Yes. I think they are, the idea of normalizing relations between Israel and the Sunni Arab countries, I think, is a very good thing.
Did you think the move of the embassy to Jerusalem was a good thing?
I would not have done it, certainly not in isolation. It was a major card to play, and I would have gotten something significant from the Israeli government if I were going to do it. I also would have done it in the context of providing something for the Palestinians. So it's not in and of itself wrong. How it was carried out was wrong.
Has it worked out well?
Not particularly. There's been no progress in relations or issues with the Palestinians. And Israel is moving farther along a path where it's going to one day have to choose between being a democratic state and a Jewish state. And I don't see that as being in Israel's long-term interest.
Okay, it's an interview, not a debate, but I will note that I think that the move of the embassy and the recognition of the annexation led to the Abraham Accords, which are important. Are the NATO increases in defense spending a good thing?
Absolutely, though the challenge with NATO is not simply how much it spends, but how it spends it. My problem with NATO, and I hope the Biden approach is different, basically says, let's think about how we spend money, because right now we could actually spend as much money as we're spending, not more, and get much more defense for it. Virtually every country in NATO does its defense spending on a national basis. It ought to be done much more on an alliance collective basis.
Next, on the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, there's been a major change in American orientation toward the CCP. I believe it's bipartisan, by the way. I believe everyone has recognized the CCP as the malign actor that it is. Is that a good thing to have that recognition dawn on both parties?
Not particularly. The Communist Party of China is 90-plus million people. It's led by a guy named Xi Jinping. This is the government of China. We may disagree with it profoundly. We should disagree with it profoundly. But it's not going anywhere. So we ought to essentially deal with the government of China we have. It's a little bit like, what was it, Rumsfeld's line, you go to war with the army you have. We've got to do diplomacy with the government we have. I don't much like it, but it's the government of China. Regime change is not in the offing. It's not in the cards. We have major issues to discuss with China, which means with people who are members of the Chinese Communist Party. Let's discuss those major issues. You began this conversation with Taiwan, so let's deal with Taiwan. Let's deal with North Korea. Let's deal with Hong Kong. Let's deal with what they're doing to the Uyghur minority. Let's deal with the theft of intellectual property. Those are all areas we can make some progress on by dealing with people who happen to be members of the Chinese Communist Party. But to go after the party per se, that's not serious foreign policy.
Well, we disagree because I think you have to know with whom you are dealing. And if you are dealing with a murderous regime, and it is a murderous regime, and I don't think you would dispute that, they are destroying Hong Kong's facade of freedom, and they are imprisoning in concentration gulags Uyghurs by the million. It is an evil regime, is it not?
We're not disagreeing about the nature of the Chinese Communist Party. What I'm saying is to make their removal or ousting.
Well, I'm not saying that either.
Mike Pompeo has been saying it. He has made the Chinese Communist Party a major impediment to U.S.-Chinese dialogue. That's simply not true. We have got to have a serious dialogue with this China, led by the Chinese Communist Party, for all the issues that you care about.
But this is reminiscent of when I was in the Reagan White House, Richard, and you served too. The president calling the USSR an evil empire did not prevent Reykjavik from happening. And to name that what it is, the CCP, and to describe it accurately, and the virus coming out of Wuhan as having been a terrible disservice of the world. These are accurate statements from which negotiations must proceed if they are to proceed well.
The difference is in the 1950s, when we looked at the Soviet Union, people called for rollback of the Communist Party, and that was rejected. And instead, over the next 35, 40 years, the United States had diplomatic interaction with leaders of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. And the last I checked, we won the Cold War peacefully on our terms.
Because we deployed the Pershings and the cruise missiles in 1983, and because Reagan called it an evil empire and called on Gorbachev to tear down the wall. Because he was blunt.
But also because of their own internal flaws, even more, and Gorbachev's mistakes. So and because of Afghanistan and what we did there. So we ought to have a comprehensive policy towards the Chinese. We can be critical of the Communist Party, as we should be, but to distinguish right now between the Communist Party of China and the government of China, they're tantamount to the same thing, and we should be focusing on where we disagree on their behavior.
Well, I don't know that we disagree much. I'm very, very happy with the announcement today that President-elect Biden has named Kurt Campbell to be his China expert. He's a hawk, and he's a realist. I do fear we're going to go...
to teach together.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see is this is going to be a tough policy towards China in this administration. Probably even tougher on some of the human rights issues. Very tough on the South China Sea and Hong Kong. I don't think it's going to be bought off, the new administration, by this or that export-related agreement. Personal diplomacy won't count for as much. But this is going to be a difficult relationship. It should be a difficult relationship, given the many things the Chinese are up to.
Now, I've met Wendy Sherman once. I think she's a very nice person, and I've met Tony Blinken, and he's good friends with my friend Poneman. So I know they're expert, but I fear waking up someday to find that the 9-dash line has been recognized in exchange for carbon reduction commitments in 2080, Richard.
I think there's no chance of that happening. Again, people like Kurt Campbell, who you just mentioned, the others are very, these are realists on China. They've got important connections with other countries in the region. So my guess is there'll be no change in U.S. policy in the South China Sea. We're not going to recognize what the Chinese are proclaiming, and periodically we will challenge them, and we will assert our right to sail through these waters.
Now, Richard, you've written this article, President the Destruction, Trump's final act has accelerated the onset of a post-American world, that says it begins from the beginning, the essence of Trump foreign policy has been disruption of the arrangements and policies that largely served the United States well for 3/4 of a century. You go on to argue that the images of last week have reinforced in our fellow democracy something is seriously wrong here, and that allies have little choice but to question their decision to entrust the security of the United States. The violence of the United States Capitol has been repeatedly denounced here, and during the actual demonstration, the FBI has arrested 130 people. But Richard, I heard a speech by George Shultz 10 years ago when he dedicated my law school at Chapman, saying that the post-war order was crumbling. This was before Trump came down the escalator. He said every institution from Bretton Woods forward was falling apart, that NATO had fallen out. What exactly is different because of Trump than what's happening already? The post-World War II order is over.
I don't think it's over. I think the post-World War II order and the institutions still exist. Some of them clearly have not done well with the passage of time, but NATO's still doing okay. You've got things like the International Monetary Fund. You've got the World Bank. You've got the World Trade Organization. All flawed, admittedly, but the basics are there. American leadership in the world. I think the biggest problem with Donald Trump and why history will be so harsh is he inherited the disorder, as I described, imperfect and flawed, and rather than strengthening it, he accelerated its decline. And almost like healthcare, he pulled the rug out from under it without replacing it with something better. That's my problem with Donald Trump.
Now, I wonder, though, when you say that people have to worry about America's providing security, Australia despaired of the Obama administration's foreign policy. Our allies in the Sunni world despaired of the Iranian deal. Our allies despaired of the Syrian genocide. Our allies despaired of the Crimean attack and the annexation of Crimea and the attack on Ukraine. I think Donald Trump has done much better in foreign policy than President Obama did. I believe that's actually objectively true. And the Abraham Accords, of course, are the crowning achievement. How do you respond to that? Again, putting aside last week, because last week is terrible, but there are 4 years before last week, Richard.
Look, there are things that Trump did in foreign policy I approve of. You mentioned some of them, arming Ukraine, the Abraham Accords, the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement, tougher line towards China. And there's things with the Obama administration I disagree with, beginning with Syria and the non-response to the crossing of the red line there as a critic of the Iran nuclear deal. My problem with Trump is, again, in virtually every area, from the World Health Organization to the Iran deal, he pulled out without putting something better in its place. He's isolated the United States. And I simply look at the country and the world, and to use a Ronald Reagan line, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Hell no. We're not.
Oh, boy, do we disagree.
Than we were 4 years ago.
Boy, do we disagree. Another conversation another time. I think we're much better off than we were 4 years ago. If only because of the sequester, Richard. Last word to you. The sequester was on when he came in. The defense has been rebuilt since he left.
Well, that's another conversation for another day. I think on balance on that, we are far worse off domestically and far worse off internationally. And to me, that will be his legacy. He left the country and the world in much worse shape than he founded it.
Richard, thank you for joining me. It's always good to talk to you. President at the Destruction, I've tweeted it out. Find it at Hugh Hewitt on Twitter. I'll be right back, America. Cut that last part off, Adam, where I said I'll be right back, America. Okay.
U.S. policy in the South China Sea. We're not going to recognize with agreement. Personal diplomacy won't matter as much. But this is going to be a difficult relationship. It should be a difficult relationship given agreement. Personal diplomacy and
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. My conversation with Richard Haass of the Council on Foreign Relations continued into the break. Here it is. Now, I've met Wendy Sherman once. I think she's a very nice person, and I've met Tony Blinken, and he's good friends with my friend Poneman. So I know they're expert, but I fear waking up someday to find that the 9-dash line has been recognized in exchange for carbon reduction commitments in 2080, Richard.
I think there's no chance of that happening. Again, people like Kurt Campbell, who you just mentioned, the others are very these are realists on China. They've got important connections with other countries in the region. So my guess is there'll be no change in U.S. policy in the South China Sea. We're not going to recognize what the Chinese are proclaiming, and periodically we will challenge them and we will assert our right to sail through these waters.
Now, Richard, you've written this article, President the Destruction, Trump's final act has accelerated the onset of a post-American world, that says it begins from the beginning, the essence of Trump foreign policy has been disruption of the arrangements and policies that largely served the United States well for 3/4 of a century. You go on to argue that the images of last week have reinforced in our fellow democracy something is seriously wrong here, and that allies have little choice but to question their decision to entrust the security of the United States. The violence of the United States Capitol has been repeatedly denounced here, and during the actual demonstration, the FBI has arrested 130 people. But Richard, I heard a speech by George Shultz 10 years ago when he dedicated my law school at Chapman, saying that the post-war order was crumbling. This is before Trump came down the escalator. He said every institution from Bretton Woods forward was falling apart, that NATO had fallen out. What exactly is different because of Trump than what's happening already? The post-World War II order is over.
I don't think it's over. I think the post-World War II order and the institutions still exist. Some of them clearly have not done well with the passage of time, but NATO's still doing okay. You've got things like the International Monetary Fund. You've got the World Bank. You've got the World Trade Organization. All flawed, admittedly, but the basics are there. American leadership in the world. I think the biggest problem with Donald Trump and why history will be so harsh is he inherited the disorder, as I described, imperfect and flawed, and rather than strengthening it, he accelerated its decline. And almost like healthcare, he pulled the rug out from under it without replacing it with something better. That's my problem with Donald Trump.
Now, I wonder, though, when you say that people have to worry about America's providing security, Australia despaired of the Obama administration's foreign policy. Our allies in the Sunni world despaired of the Iranian deal. Our allies despaired of the Syrian genocide. Our allies despaired of the Crimean attack and the annexation of Crimea and the attack on Ukraine. I think Donald Trump has done much better in foreign policy than President Obama did. I believe that's actually objectively true. And the Abraham Accords, of course, are the crowning achievement. How do you respond to that? Again, putting aside last week, because last week is terrible, but there are 4 years before last week, Richard.
Look, there are things that Trump did in foreign policy I approve of. You mentioned some of them, arming Ukraine, the Abraham Accords, the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement, tougher line towards China. And there's things with the Obama administration I disagreed with, beginning with Syria and the non-response to the crossing of the red line there as a critic of the Iran nuclear deal. My problem with Trump is, again, in virtually every area, from the World Health Organization to the Iran deal, he pulled out without putting something better in its place. He's isolated the United States. And I simply look at the country and the world, and to use a Ronald Reagan line, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Hell no. We're not.
Oh, boy, do
We're
we
worse off
disagree.
than we were 4 years ago.
Boy, do we disagree. Another conversation another time. I think we're much better off than we were 4 years ago. If only because of the sequester, Richard. Last word to you. The sequester was on when he came in. The defense has been rebuilt since he left.
Well, that's another conversation for another day. I think on balance on that, we are far worse off domestically and far worse off internationally. And to me, that will be his legacy. He left the country and the world in much worse shape than he founded it.
Richard, thank you for joining me. It's always good to talk to you. President the Destruction, I've tweeted it out. Find it at Hugh Hewitt on Twitter. The Contrary View America, Richard Haass, always welcome here, will be presented by Ambassador Rick Grennell in the next hour. Coming up after the break, Representative Mike Gallagher facing an important vote today. Will he vote yes or no on impeachment? We'll discuss when he returns on the next segment of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Don't forget to sign up for the Hugh-niverse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.hugh-niverse.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
I mean, there's a lot of Republicans, oh, okay, thank you, CNN, rush to CNN. You shouldn't give CNN the time of day. Why? Anybody you see on CNN or any of these anti-Republican, anti-conservative outlets, that speaks volumes. It speaks volumes. If you're cozying up to the media elites, you are telling the world who you really are. Again, I love this this comment I saw on social media last night. Gave me a little bit of hope after a despondent evening. Fun fact, the ruling elite are terrified of an angry general populace. Listen, they despise people like Ron DeSantis because he stands up to jerks like that lady.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
I was watching a certain congressman who I won't name, a former congressman, who 5 or 6 times on television right now, he just said, I'm so surprised to see this. I'm so stunned to see this. You can be saddened to see it, like I am. But if you're surprised that you're seeing this, then you have done an awful job governing and legislating. This should not be a surprise to anyone that actually understands what is happening in this country. And this is beyond politics at this moment. This is beyond Republican and Democrat. This is a multi-institutional problem that is happening in America. So I want to get into this as we lead. We're waiting for the President of the Senate, the Vice President, to reconvene the session. As we promised you, we're going to be covering this live tonight, and we covered it all throughout the day. What drove those people to scale the walls of Congress today, of which I don't support? But why did they do that? The sloppy and the lazy analysis that is being given is because President Trump told them to do that. That's wrong. That's not true. First of all, he didn't tell them to do that. But that's a simpleton argument. They did that because they don't trust their system. That's why. I just heard Jonathan Turley on Fox News, who I think is a very smart guy, and he said, how could these people not trust their system? What's gotten into them? What's gotten into them? They watch the news.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Then, if you go to Sullivan's Twitter feed, some of these things I cannot read out to you on live radio, but he reposted this. Kick these fascists out of D.C., January 6, 2021. Dump Trump for good. Location, Washington Monument, 11 a.m. on the 6th. Then he reposted this, and I'm editing it. F the system. Time to burn it all down. Hashtag BLM, hashtag Antifa, hashtag F the system, hashtag abolish capitalism, hashtag abolish the police, hashtag F Trump. Now, the last little wrinkle in all of this, and you can see this, his face has been identified from video inside the storming of Congress. Not only is his face completely recognizable, he's standing right next to the Air Force veteran, Ashley Babbitt, who was shot and killed in Congress. Not only does he appear in photographs of that incident, the video, at least I think there's two videos, but one of the videos of her being shot and dying inside Congress, unarmed, was in fact taken by Mr. Sullivan.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined now by Congressman Mike Gallagher, representing Wisconsin in the United States Congress and in the House, which today will vote on an article of impeachment. Good morning, Congressman. How are you?
Good, Hugh. How are you?
Good. Would you remind people the events of Wednesday last and what happened to you?
Well, the day started, of course, with an interview with the great Hugh Hewitt, and I think we were talking about quaint things like losing the Senate with the Georgia races and what that meant for the Republican Party, and never in my wildest dreams did I think that a few hours later I would be barricading my office door, having a serious discussion with my staff about whether to use my Marine Corps sword hanging on the wall or the flagpoles with that Hello Big Wisconsin and American flags as defensive weapons if it comes to that. But that's what happened. And looking back, I'm still shocked at how quickly it devolved. I mean, around noon, I was going to the Cannon Rotunda to do an interview with Fox about China, the CDC denying access to WHO inspectors for the coronavirus outbreak. And then we were bumped for the president's speech. You know, Cannon gets evacuated shortly thereafter. We're told to shelter in place. The clashes at the foot of the Capitol get violent, then all of a sudden they breach the Capitol security perimeter, and you can hear the sound of flashbangs going off in the distance, and obviously all Americans are now familiar with the horrifying images thereafter, and you know we have five people dead. So it was just a horrific day. It's a day I didn't think was possible in the United States Capitol. It reminded me more of things that I saw in Iraq than in the United States of America.
When did you serve in Iraq, Congressman?
I was there in 2007 and then again in 2008.
So not long after the surge and after not long, well, indeed, both times are very violent. Did you ever feel personally as threatened in Iraq as you did in the Congress?
You know, it's funny. I was telling my wife this. I was an intel officer, so I'm not here to tell you I was Chesty Puller or was ever in a harrowing danger. I just think when you're surrounded by a battalion of Marines, you feel pretty safe, even in a bad environment. In some ways, this was less secure, just because the situation was so fluid and there was so much uncertainty. I mean, they found a bomb, in the alleyway behind the house I share with some colleagues of mine. There was a lot of confusion and a lot of chaos, and it really, I think it's shaken a lot of members of Congress.
Of course it should. I mean, it's a terrible day in American history. It was an insurrection inside the Congress. A police officer was murdered, and had it not been for some smart members of the Capitol Police, the Senate with members in it would have been breached. There's a moment there where one officer leads the criminals away from the Senate, which, I mean, he should get the Medal of Freedom. Let me ask you, Congressman, in terms of the Capitol Police, do you have any idea what happened to the collapse of security?
I don't yet. We got a briefing last night that started to fill in some of the details. I just want to say a couple things. The first is that I think the frontline police officers performed heroically. I after being barricaded in my office for the better part of 7 hours, when we got control of the Capitol complex and had to vote on the Arizona objectors, I walked downstairs, and there's a little Dunkin' Donuts in the basement of Longworth, and the building was otherwise deserted, but it was filled with Capitol police officers laying on the ground, exhausted, getting some water and some snacks, and it's just, I'm not a very sentimental person, Hugh, but it really hit me like a ton of bricks, and I definitely broke down a little bit, and I started thanking these guys, because they were engaged in sustained combat for the better part of 6 hours. So they performed admirably. I suspect when the dust settles and we know more, and there should be a comprehensive investigation into this, I suspect we'll learn that their leadership failed them. I don't know how high up that goes. I do, however, have a buddy who I served with in the Marine Corps who's now a DC cop, and they were providing security for the rally. They got on their bikes and headed over and arrived at the Capitol to reinforce the Capitol Police around 2:30, and they got on their riot gear, and he said they expended all their munitions in the form of CS gas and sting bombs and things like that. So, it's crazy. But there was obviously a failure. I mean, you shouldn't be able to lose control of the Capitol that quickly, and we're going to have to get to the bottom of it.
Now, I believe we shared the opinion that the objections were without merit and ought not to have been voted, but that it was not an unconstitutional action to vote for them. Am I correctly summarizing your position?
Well, I think I wrote an op-ed in the National Review that morning. I guess I would say I found no support in the Constitution for the idea that somehow Congress on January 6th has a meaningful role to play in overturning the results of the state. So, reasonable people can disagree about what, their constitutional oath demands, but my reading of the Constitution was not that, on January 6th, we had an opportunity to overturn the results of the election. On a practical level, I do think that we gave a lot of people false hope about what was possible on January 6th. And I think that was the fundamental problem with the objectors' strategy. They thought they were going to have a couple hours of debate on the House and Senate floor and draw attention to voter irregularities and, fight for the base. But thousands of people were coming to D.C. and millions more around the country praying that on January 6th, we were going to overturn the results of the election. And that was never going to happen. And the president's suggestion that Vice President Pence had the power to do otherwise was not true. And I think that was a faulty strategy and ended up being a very dangerous strategy.
Well, I agree with all of that, but I was going to the point that your colleagues who voted for the objections were following a well-worn path cleared originally by Democrats in 2004 and 2016, and that it is theater. It was political theater, and it was supposed to be 2 hours of why did Pennsylvania change their absentee rules without consulting the legislature, and there would have been a response, and there would have been an argument. And I had written in the Post, and I hope no one aired a false allegation, but we'll never know, but that they were not acting unconstitutionally. They were acting within the rules of the House and the Senate. That was my point.
I take your point, but I will say what I said to my colleagues the day before on January 5th, which is that, this argument that the Democrats did it first and did it, I think, 4 times over the last 60-some-odd years, is probably the best argument against doing it. I mean, just because the Democrats did it doesn't mean it's something that we should do. Indeed,
I agree. But the key here, Congressman, is that it is not lawless for them to do that. It was lawless for the people to enter the House. And there's a difference between lawlessness and lawful protest. That's, to me, the most important thing. A First Amendment right in the House rules. But I know your position, and I think your position was persuasive, and I wish more people would listen to your position. I want to ask you now about the vote to impeach today. How will you vote when the article of impeachment is? It's just one article, correct?
That's my understanding. Well, I continue to believe, and I'm engaged in very rigorous debates right now with my colleagues, that a swift and strong censure would be the best path forward. If for no other reason than it could actually, we have some bicameral support behind it. It actually will achieve its intended effect. And I think the problem with impeachment, as I see it right now, beyond some of the inaccuracies of the articles, is that it's not going to achieve either of its two purposes. One, removal from office, because it won't get to the Senate until the 19th. And then two is, a prohibition on Trump running for future office. And then I think the Democrats have also undermined themselves because on the one hand, they're saying this is so urgent, this man cannot be allowed another day in office. But on the other hand, they took the weekend off. There have been various games played with the timing of when they're going to transmit the articles. And there's no scenario in which they actually removed him from office prior to January 20th. So if indeed Nancy Pelosi is worried about Trump having access to the nuclear code, this strategy doesn't do a darn thing about that. So I think it has flaws. But Hugh, I'll confess that I do think Congress needs to go on record in some respect rebuking the president's rhetoric and action. And I think a censure right now would be best. We've introduced one, but thus far we've gotten no Democratic colleagues of ours to sign on and potentially take a step back from the ledge here, which I do think on balance would be the best for the country, given just how combustible of a situation we're in.
Well, were I a member, I would urge you to bring that forward, but to amend it to provide for a nonpartisan commission to investigate the conduct of everyone from November 3rd forward, because there's a lot of irresponsible conduct to be investigated. But I also believe it is necessary for Trump supporters to hear, because I hear them every day, to hear that the 60 lawsuits were lost and that there was an opportunity to present evidence. There's now about another dangerous echo chamber that, they never got a chance to review the evidence. That's not true. He had no case. There was no case. He lost the election narrowly for reasons that you can complain about, like suppression polling, and I would like to see a censure motion accompanied by a commitment for a 9/11 style commission with a membership similar to that. Let me go to the impeachment, however. Have you read Judge Luttig's column in the Washington Post today?
I have not, Hugh. I apologize.
Okay. I would recommend you read it. Judge Luttig says it is simply unconstitutional to begin a trial of a president who's leaving office, and he is correct. The two precedents that the other side cites are inopposite and wrongly decided at the time they were pursued. Judge Luttig is correct. But I want to ask this. Have you argued with your colleagues yet that if an impeachment trial begins and Donald Trump objects, as he will in court, and the court strikes it down, will he not appear vindicated?
That's, I was persuaded of that argument last week. I mean, particularly if he escapes two impeachments. I think he's sort of doubly vindicated and comes out a martyr. And again, I think it gets to sort of the practical purpose behind impeachment. Why pursue it if you're not going to achieve your objective, or if it's going to be entirely counterproductive to your stated objective? And
do you agree with me the first impeachment was a partisan charade?
Yes, 100%. I voted against it, and I would vote against it again today. This is a different circumstance, but again, I do worry that it's going to be counterproductive in that regard. And
I agree with everything you've done. I really wish you would take Congressman Cheney aside and give her the Luttig editorial, because they are not considering what will happen when the president rightly wins the lawsuit against an impeachment post-presidency. It's such an improvident action today, Michael. Thank you, though, for joining me. I respect your candor a lot, and I think our audience does as well. Congressman Mike Gallagher, always a pleasure. Time for me to remind you, Mike Gallagher is the fastest man in Congress. He tells me that every time that he knows Cotton is listening, because he beat him in the 5K. It's because I think he takes relieffactor.com and gets over the minor aches and pains. No, he's not as fast as I was when I was his age. I don't believe he has a 3:12 marathon, actually 3:13, because it's 3:12:38. But relieffactor.com is useful whether you are a young man like Congressman Gallagher or in the prime of your middle age like me. because I intend to live to 120. ReliefFactor.com. I carry in Kirkman, Resveratrol, and Omega. Go and get it. 1-800-520-1234 connects you to me, and I'll take some calls after this. 1-800-520-1234. But ReliefFactor.com is where you get Relief Factor. Stay tuned.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
So now me at 27, I can now play historian. So let me tell you what's about to happen, okay?
Sure.
When Democrats have unified government, they're going to reach too big, and they're going to fail with a lot of it. We now have to pinpoint, though, what fights matter most. Number one, the continuation of the Electoral College. Number two, no more seats on the Supreme Court. Number three, no new states. Number three is the one that we really got to look out for. So if we're smart, we should go ask Joe Manchin right now on the record, do you support adding new states to the union? I have a whole very provocative argument that I think that Joe Manchin should run for Senate Majority Leader and all the Republicans should support him, therefore not allowing Chuck Schumer becoming Senate Majority Leader. So I'm going to come out with that publicly today. I guess I'm breaking it exclusively, Eric. I did come up with the idea, but it's actually so patently obvious. But then here's the other thing that's going to happen, Eric, is that we're going to start to get it's going to get worse before it gets better. They're going to crack down on us like never before. There's going to be a lot of indictments, investigations, deplatforming, censoring, loss of hope. And then things will, then we're going to have to rally and we're going to have to find some momentum. But for anyone who now says, well, the country is over, it's lost, then go to Paris. Okay. I have no time for you right now. Okay. I'm going to fight for every single inch of this country. And if you're all of a sudden going to be these people that there's a direct connection of the people that were dealing in hopi, like give me the hopium. And now the people that want nothing to do with it. It's over. It's done. Fine.
Yeah.
Go to Brussels. Okay. I want nothing to do with that. We got to fight.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
I watch a lot of CNN and MSNBC, Haass, so you don't have to. I got the scars to prove it. Let me tell you something. Trump talked about the rally. He wanted people to come to D.C. Nobody said, 5 people are going to be killed because these guys are going to assault the Capitol building. Oh, my goodness. Nobody said that. The most severe, pathological, hateful Trump hater never said that. Nobody said that. How many Trump rallies have there been? When have you seen this? That's why they weren't ready. Didn't think it was going to happen. Hadn't happened before. And there is some evidence that some of the people there were outside agitators, infiltrators. Some. Don't know. We're still sorting that out. But at least one guy is a known Antifa, Black Lives Matter activist, violent guy from Utah. One of them. But people didn't anticipate this. Because heretofore, for the most part, the Trump rallies have been peaceful. And most of the people, again, there were peaceful. All of a sudden, the media has forgotten that term that they love so much called mostly peaceful. They've also forgotten that term they love so much called defund the police. Why weren't the police there? Why wasn't there more?
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I haven't checked the market yet this hour, brought to you by andrewandtodd.com. If you need to finance the purchase of a home, and many people are rushing out to do that right now because they want to move away from cities because of the virus, and they want a return on their money when interest rates are so low in the bank and they don't trust the stock market, or they need to get money out to survive what has been a terrible year of the virus, or they want to send their kids to college in the fall. Now is the time to get money out of your house if you've got one, or to acquire a house. You can even become a non-occupying co-borrower, meaning that you sign on with your children or your grandchildren to help them buy a home And you do that by going to andrewandtodd.com. That's one word, Andrew, A-N-D, Todd, T-O-D-D.com. They are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They are lenders. They actually lend you the money. You apply to them. They look at it and they tell you very quickly whether you got a good mortgage coming and what the mortgage rate will be and what your credit is and how much you can afford to borrow and how much you can get out of your house. They're the best people in the world to do this. I've known Andrew for 20 years. I've known Todd for 8. I was in a Bible study with Andrew for a long time when I lived in California. 888-888-1172. Really, they're the best people you can trust. 888-888-1172. Yesterday, the market was up 60 on the Dow, the NASDAQ 36, the S&P up 1.58. Overseas, everything is a little bit down today. England and Germany down, but oil is up to $53 a barrel, and gold is up to $18.54. The 10-year Treasury, that's the interest rate on which all home borrowing is based. It's not the interest rate you'll get, is up to 1.14. That's double what it was 6 months ago. And I believe in another 6 months it's going to be double again. It'll still be lower than people are typically accustomed to, but please go now and refinance your home now. At andrewandtodd.com. Kevin in Columbus, Ohio. Hello, Kevin. Should the impeachment proceed today?
How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. So I'm wondering why do most Republicans, at least publicly, think that the president shouldn't be impeached and removed? I mean, this mess that we're in, I mean, how much worse could it get short of a civil war, which it looks like that's going to happen anyway? So stop,
Kevin, there is no civil war. There was a mob at the Capitol and an attempted blocking of the Congress. An order was restored, and it would have been put down with more violence if necessary. There is no insurrection. There is no civil war.
But listen, you guys talk about Black Lives Matter. How many police
Patrick, stop. I don't like the tone. I don't like the tone. Thank you. Patrick in Cleveland. Patrick,
Hugh, the last impeachment was about a bad phone call, correct?
Correct.
And this one's about a bad speech. What in the speech?
No, it's not.
Was wrong.
No, it's not. The impeachment is about who is responsible.
Why haven't they played it on NBC News? Why don't they play the speech on NBC News?
I just want to, Patrick, this got nothing to do with anyone in the media. This has got to do with the conduct of the president, not just on the day of the speech, but summoning the demonstrators and his speech. I would not vote for impeachment. I've made that perfectly clear. I believe it is unconstitutional. But do not frame it incorrectly. It's about the entire course of conduct since the election. It's got nothing to do with the media. It is all about the president and whether or not he ought to be impeached and removed. And I do not believe he should be.
When's Chuck Todd going to come out?
All right, Patrick. People call me up and they want to talk about members of the media. That's got nothing to do with the events today. Roseanne in Pennsylvania.
Yes, good morning.
Hi, Roseanne.
Good morning, Hugh. Hey, I wrote you I wrote a poem a while back and I sent it to you. I don't know if you got to read it or not. It was called it was called Just the Truth, Please.
Well, I did not, Roseanne, but I got to ask you, do you want the impeachment to proceed? I don't want a poem this morning.
No, I'm not going to give you a poem. I want to tell you, what this, I don't think that he should be, and what is bothering me really, as I was telling your call taker when I laid my head down last night to bed, I'm thinking, this is such a mess that have we come to the place that if there is another 9/11, because I had a verse in a thing that said, even on the steps of Congress, laying their differences aside, all party leaders sang, God bless America with pride. That was in 9/11. That's what happened. And then we all came back together, and a year later it was crazy again. I think I'm so concerned that it's going to be, if there's another 9/11, if something like that should happen, before somebody helps somebody, they're going to say, are you a Democrat or Republican? If you are, they're going to let you lay there.
No, you know what? I don't actually think we're there, Roseanne. I don't believe that. My best friend is a Democrat. The godfather of my children is a Democrat. I don't believe that. I don't believe it. Most of my family are Democrats.
Well, I have two good friends that are, and I say to them, we can't talk politics because I love you too much.
Well, I don't talk politics with people, but that's different from if attacked, would I come to your aid? The police are never
Right.
going to ask, at least I don't believe the police are ever going to ask, are you a Republican or a Democrat? Let's not overstate. There's deep political division. There's not deep patriotic division. 95 to 99% of the country are wonderful, patriotic Americans. It's the greatest country in which to live at the greatest time ever to be alive. And there are some very difficult problems ahead, but it is not the dawning of a dark age. I'll be right back, America. Hour number 3. Your calls continue on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Law and order. I tell you what, it's law and order when you want to smear Republicans, but it's a peaceful protest when you're burning the city down for the devil.
Well, that's unfortunately, Lance, many of us know that exactly what you're saying, that is true. So the question is, what do we do? In other words, will we have the ability going forward to keep the republic? I mean, that's the question. I have said that if Biden gets in, either way, fraudulently or legitimately, he and his folks are going to take us down a path that destroys our ability to recover.
It is important that we, in our movement, recognize we are a movement, and that Donald Trump is willing to still lead that movement. And that movement is going to redefine politics in the Republican Party. And that movement is going to damage the Democrats. And what we must beware of is what happened yesterday cannot ever happen again. We can't give them the gift of having us for a moment do anything that is unrighteous, because they could be unrighteous all day and will never call themselves out. But if they bait us into participating in something they do, it's us that's going to get in trouble. It's like the kid in school who knows how to do something bad, and it's always when turns around their straight face, and the goofy kid who participated, that's the one the teacher caught. That's us. So we got to start with, and I mean this sincerely, no violence, because they would love to come for the guns of lawful people, just like they want to come for the freedom of speech of God's most righteous people.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
I'm watching this thing, and I'm looking at this horrific scene of how these people breach the Capitol building, hoping nobody gets hurt, hoping the officers are able to maintain order, hoping there's no destruction of valuable, artifacts and things like that in that building. How this looks but from terrorists, they're saying how easy it is to breach. That's what I'm thinking about. It never occurred to me to go, you know what, Larry? I wonder what would have happened had these people been largely black people. I guess I had other things on my mind, but if you want to play that game, let's play that game. Holding in my baby brown libertarian fingers, article from the Wall Street Journal, April 27, 2016, headline: "This study found race matters in police shootings, but the results may surprise you." And the article, very detailed. I urge you to go get it yourself. We have it up on LarryElder.com. And it goes through a very thorough analysis of how studies, analyses, research back to the 70s show the police more hesitant, more reluctant to pull the trigger on black suspects than on white suspects. Washington State, over a series of years, 3 studies, all of which reached the same conclusion. Officers were 3 times more hesitant to pull the trigger against a black suspect than a white suspect. So, you want to play this game about what would have happened had the protesters been black? The likelihood is they would have pulled back even more, and the building would have been trashed more.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
This notion of, you're crazy if you believe anything went awry, when, according to Congressman a North Carolina congressman. Yes, here we go. Dan Bishop. There were 385 pre-election lawsuits to change election laws. Even if the counting were honest, do you know how much cheating went on by changing the laws? And over the course of time, dropping election day as election day to election month, and the sending out of ballots. And what's the word that they have for bundling? Is that the word? Bundle? What is the word? Harvest, yeah. Half this country doesn't believe in any of its institutions, and they're right. I'm in that half. If you send your child to any school that teaches the 1619 Project, you have made the choice to have your child lied to about your country. 100% lie. So my heart breaks for you because you have other things to do in life other than to also be your children's teachers, or at least to organize their teaching, as in homeschooling. Maybe you could find a good school that actually teaches truth and not a left-wing school. Maybe, and if that would be the best.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
You know what? I saw Ron DeSantis say something the other day that really, really got to me. He said the highlight of my life, of my job, of my existence is to have people come up to me now and with tears in their eyes and say, thank you, Governor DeSantis. Thanks to you, my family still has an income. I still have a job. Thanks to you, I've been able to survive this horrific year. You should see New York. Oh, my goodness. It's terrible what New Yorkers have experienced and are continuing to experience. And believe me, look at the comparisons of New York and Florida. It's very apt. So here's Governor DeSantis at that press conference where a CNN reporter was strutting around like a peacock trying to embarrass him and talk over him. And he completely bested her with this exchange.
What has gone wrong with the rollout of the vaccine that we've seen phone lines jammed, websites crashed?
There's a lot of demand. I mean, I think at the end of the day, excuse me.
If I could finish my question.
You just said what has gone wrong, so I'm answering the question.
If I could complete the question, though.
So you're going to give a speech or are you going to ask a question?
We've seen websites crash and also senior citizens waiting overnight for the vaccine.
Where was that at?
We've seen it in Duval, Broward, Orange, and Lee.
Why was there a big line? Did you investigate why?
Could you tell us why?
Because we distributed vaccine to hospitals, and the hospital said, first come, first serve. If you show up, we'll do it.
See, I mean, these CNN clowns aren't interested in any kind of answers. She doesn't care about a response. She wants to posture and behave more like an activist than a reporter.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
The last year we have seen BLM Incorporated rioters burn down the cities of our country with very little to any of arrests happen. We saw Antifa go after conservatives and kill a conservative in the street of Portland. We saw the Russia hoax and 0 people be held accountable to it. From Peter Strzok to Lisa Page to Brennan to Clapper. We saw this entire voter fraud nonsense.
Morning, Glory America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. It's Hugh Hewitt. Important day in American history. The House of Representatives will consider an article of impeachment today. It is my recommendation every member of them vote against it. Judge J. Michael Luttig served as a judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit from 1991 to 2006. Judge Luttig and Chief Justice Roberts were both federal appeals court judges at the time that George W. Bush chose a successor to William Rehnquist to nominate. President Bush chose Chief Justice Roberts. Michael Luttig was the runner-up. He subsequently left the bench and became general counsel for the Boeing Corporation. He is a great scholar, an extraordinarily influential judge. Most of his clerks went on to clerk on the Supreme Court. He and the Chief Justice are friends. They are both former colleagues of mine from White House counsel's day in the Reagan years. And I wanted you to hear Judge Luttig's argument. In the event you are driving to the Capitol, please listen. He writes, "It appears that even if the House of Representatives impeaches President Trump this week, the Senate trial on that impeachment will not begin until Trump has left office and President-elect Biden has become president on January 20th. That Senate trial would be unconstitutional," writes Judge Luttig. On Sunday, House Majority Whip James Clyburn suggested that while House Democrats would take up articles of impeachment this week against President Trump, the House might delay sending the Senate any articles passed by the House until after President-elect Biden's first 100 days in office. Biden proposed an alternative, under which the new Senate would immediately begin working on his legislative agenda and confirming his cabinet appointments in the mornings and conduct the impeachment trial in the afternoon. The sequencing of the House impeachment proceedings before Trump's departure from office and the inauguration of the new president, followed by a Senate impeachment trial that it continues, perhaps a month later, raises the question of whether a former president can be impeached after he leaves office. The Constitution itself answers this question clearly. No, he cannot be. Once Trump's term ends on January 20, Congress loses its constitutional authority to continue impeachment proceedings against him, even if the House has already approved articles of impeachment. Therefore, if the House of Representatives were to impeach the president before he leaves office, the Senate could not therefore convict the former president and disqualify him under the Constitution from future public office. The reason for this is found in the Constitution itself, Judge Luttig continues. Trump would no longer be incumbent in the office of the president at the time of the delayed Senate proceeding. It would no longer be subject to, quote, impeachment conviction, close quote, by the Senate under the Constitution's impeachment clauses, which is to say that the Senate's only power under the Constitution is to convict or not an incumbent president. The purpose, text, and structure of the Constitution's impeachment clauses confirm this intuitive and common sense understanding. The very concept of constitutional impeachment presupposes the impeachment, conviction, and removal of a president who is, at the time of his impeachment, an incumbent in the office from which he is removed. Indeed, that was the purpose of the impeachment power, to remove from office a president or other civil official before he could further harm the nation from the office he then occupies. The plain text of the Constitution's several impeachment clauses confirms this understanding of this limit on the Congress's impeachment power. For example, Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution reads, quote, "The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors." In the same constitutional vein, Luttig continues, Article 1, Section 3 provides in relevant part, "Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States." Luttig continues, "It has been suggested that the Senate could proceed to try the former president and convict him in an effort to disqualify him from holding public office in the future. This is incorrect because it is a constitutional impeachment, because it is a constitutional impeachment of the president that authorizes his constitutional disqualification. If a president has not been constitutionally impeached, then the Senate is without the constitutional power to disqualify him from future office. Some constitutional scholars take support for their view that the Congress can impeach a former president from two instances in which early Congresses impeached civil officials after they had resigned their public offices. The impeachments of Senator William Blount in 1797 and the impeachment of Secretary of War William Belknap in 1876. These congressional impeachment cases provide some backing for the argument that Congress can conclude that it has the power under the Constitution to impeach a former president, and Congress's understanding of its constitutional powers would be a weighty consideration in the ultimate determination whether the Congress does possess such authority. When and if the former president goes to court to challenge his impeachment trial as unconstitutional, Congress is sure to make its argument based on these congressional precedents, as well as others, a case that would almost certainly make its way to the Supreme Court. In the end, though, only the Supreme Court can answer the question of whether Congress can impeach a president who has left office prior to its attempted impeachment of him. It is highly unlikely that the Supreme Court would yield to Congress's view that it has the power to impeach a president who is no longer in office when the Constitution itself is so clear that it does not. End of op-ed. Judge Luttig is correct. No one should vote for this article of impeachment because the trial that it proposes to commence on January 19th would be, unless concluded by noon on January 20th, unconstitutional. If it were to conclude by January noon on the 20th, it would be a farce and a scar on the Senate. What do you think? Larry in Minneapolis. Hello, Larry.
I agree with Judge Luttig, and as Alan Dershowitz says, Congress loses jurisdiction after Trump leaves office. Now, you do me a favor. You got Richard Grennell coming up pretty soon.
Yeah.
You respect him, don't you?
Very much.
Ask him if there was any voter fraud in Nevada, where he was on the ground right after the election. Would you do your listeners that favor?
Sure, there was. There was.
Outline that for you.
I will. There was voter fraud. Kurt Schlichter, who's a friend of mine, was there as part of the legal team.
Ask Kurt, too. Ask him how.
Well, Kurt's not on today, but I'll ask Rick Grennell that. But I think what he will find is that there wasn't sufficient to overturn the results of the election or to bring a case in court because no such case was brought.
Let's ask him how much there was.
All right. I will do that. Absolutely, Larry. I'm not saying there wasn't voter fraud in the United States. I'm saying no case was made in any state where it was alleged that it rose to the level that would justify the reversal of the decision. And had it done so, that case would have been heard as Bush v. Gore was heard. John in Akron. Hello, John. Welcome. Go Browns.
Go Browns. Go Buckeyes next year, maybe.
Now look, the Alabama Crimson Tide would have won the NFC East. Sometimes you're just outgunned.
They have one heck of a team. I'll agree with you.
Yeah, we're just outgunned. No shame in losing to them.
No way. Good game. You're on the subject of the impeachment. First of all, I'm totally against it. I think it's not going to unify the country like a non-impeachment would. And secondly, you said that he's being impeached on more than just what he said at the rally.
I haven't read the article. The article I saw in draft proposed to impeach him on his course of conduct since the election.
All right, but isn't the one article doesn't that just say inciting a riot or inciting insurrection?
No, it's bigger than that, and that's why I'm loath to comment on it because I haven't seen the final draft.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
These lawyer things, they actually do matter. I don't give opinions on stuff I haven't seen, or I just infer from the results in court or articles like Judge Luttig and from the plain text of the Constitution. But go ahead, make your point.
Okay, that's good enough. I can understand that. On this voter fraud thing, quick question. Why, in your opinion, did the courts reject the lawsuits?
Well, there are 60 different lawsuits, and so 60 different decisions. But in many of them, the plaintiffs did not have standing, meaning that the president did not bring those cases, or the president's campaign, or people impacted by the decision. But in other ones, they simply rejected the evidence as simply unsubstantial or not rising to the level significant enough to, for example, if you found 4 votes fraudulently cast by dead people in Georgia, which I think they did, maybe 5, that wouldn't change the election result, so they dismissed the case. Lots of reasons that they turned out that way. No conspiracy, just the rule of law. Stay tuned, America. It's Hugh Hewitt.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
This notion of, you're crazy if you believe anything went awry when, according to Congressman, a North Carolina congressman. Yes, here we go. Dan Bishop. There were 385 pre-election lawsuits to change election laws. Even if the counting were honest, do you know how much cheating went on by changing the laws? And over the course of time, dropping election day as election day to election month, and the sending out of ballots. And what's the word that they have for bundling? Is that the word? Bundle? What is the word? Harvest, yeah. Half this country doesn't believe in any of its institutions, and they're right. I'm in that half. If you send your child to any school that teaches the 1619 Project, you have made the choice to have your child lied to about your country. 100% lie. So my heart breaks for you because you have other things to do in life other than to also be your children's teachers, or at least to organize their teaching, as in homeschooling. Maybe you could find a good school that actually teaches truth and not a left-wing school. Maybe, and if that would be the best.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
You know what? I saw Ron DeSantis say something the other day that really, really got to me. He said the highlight of my life, of my job, of my existence is to have people come up to me now and with tears in their eyes and say, thank you, Governor DeSantis. Thanks to you, my family still has an income. I still have a job. Thanks to you, I've been able to survive this horrific year. You should see New York. Oh, my goodness. It's terrible what New Yorkers have experienced and are continuing to experience. And believe me, look at the comparisons of New York and Florida. It's very apt. So here's Governor DeSantis at that press conference where a CNN reporter was strutting around like a peacock trying to embarrass him and talk over him. And he completely bested her with this exchange.
What has gone wrong with the rollout of the vaccine that we've seen phone lines jammed, websites crash?
There's a lot of demand. I mean, I think at the end of the day, excuse me.
If I could finish my question.
You just said what has gone wrong, so I'm answering the question.
If I could complete the question, though.
So you're going to give a speech or you're going to ask a question?
We've seen websites crash and also senior citizens waiting overnight for the vaccine.
Where was that at?
We've seen it in Duval, Broward, Orange, and Lee.
Why was there a big line? Did you investigate why?
Could you tell us why?
Because we distributed vaccine to hospitals, and the hospital said, first come, first serve. If you show up, we'll do it.
See, I mean, these CNN clowns aren't interested in any kind of answers. She doesn't care about a response. She wants to posture and behave more like an activist than a reporter.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
The last year we have seen BLM Incorporated rioters burn down the cities of our country with very little to any of arrests happen. We saw Antifa go after conservatives and kill a conservative in the street of Portland. We saw the Russia hoax and 0 people be held accountable to it. From Peter Strzok to Lisa Page to Brennan.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Let me check markets on the day of the impeachment vote. Brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. If you need to get money out of your house, if you want to buy a house, you want to buy an apartment building, you want to get a second home, you're a veteran, you don't want to put any money down, you're a senior citizen, you want to reverse mortgage, anything related to housing, go to AndrewandTodd.com. Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They lend you the money. It's not a clearinghouse, not brokers. I know them. I have been to their office. They are longtime friends. You can trust them and their team. Call them at 888-888-1172. In the years and years they've been sponsoring the market reports, never had a complaint. Never. Because they're such good guys and their team are such good people. Trust them. 888-888-1172. Yesterday, the Dow was up 60, the NASDAQ up 36, and the S&P up 1.5. Gold is up this morning to 1852. The 10-year Treasury continues to tick up. It's at 1.14%. Overseas, everything is down just a little bit. It does not appear that the market's going to have a good day, but it's early. We don't know. Mornings never tell afternoons, and of course, earnings reports and everything else. But I don't think it's the impeachment. I do sense that concern over inflation is growing. There may be some concern over the inauguration. I believe that I just tweeted out troops in the Capitol. Look, there's not going to be a disruption of the transfer of power. Joe Biden is the president-elect, and this time next week he will be the president. And anybody who attempts to disrupt that will go to jail, and anybody who attempts to terrorize any member of the state legislatures will go to jail. And everyone involved in the breach of the Capitol ought to retain counsel and turn themselves into the Bureau. They will find you. 1-800-520-1234. Bill in New Mexico. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Ian. Thanks for taking my call. I want to tell you that the way that you've dismissed these lawsuits, these legal challenges to the election, is alarming. My current new Congresswoman, Yvette Harrell, a fine woman,
Been a guest on my show. She is a great woman.
It had 2018 elections stolen from her with these mail-in ballots. And there was more than one purpose of the desire to have all this evidence entered into the congressional record the day last Wednesday. I suggest that what you do is invite John Eastman your good friend John Eastman, Professor John Eastman, onto the program to explain to you and explain to us why he was involved in these legal challenges, because John has a very firm grip on all of these 60 lawsuits that you've dismissed out of hand.
Oh, no, I have not dismissed them. I'm glad they were filed. I'm simply noting none of them succeeded.
John, you went beyond that. It's to the point now where it's just gaslighting you.
No, it's not. There are 60 lawsuits. Not one of them succeeded. They were all legitimately brought.
You can say that as much as you want, Hugh, but until your audience understands the purposes of this challenge in Congress, you're not going to be able to save any of this reputation that you've built up in regards to this. And
I don't worry about that. I understand what you're saying. I understand that some hardcore Trump supporters want me to join a new resistance. I'm a rule of law guy. They were improvidently brought in some instances, legitimately brought in others, and not one of them has succeeded.
You may remember that I was the one that said I absolutely cannot support Donald Trump. I said that as soon as he got the nomination, and I came back afterwards a year into it, and I said, no, this guy is amazing. His foreign and domestic policy has just been absolutely amazing.
And so, Bill, I got a minute left before the break. Did you not hear me endorse and support his reelection?
No. Regardless, what's going to happen today could be just outrageous.
Well, that's why I'm opposed to it. You can hold two thoughts. Though he lost the election. It's too bad that he lost the election. Today's impeachment vote is outrageous, but there was no fraud rising to the level of changing even one state, much less
you and I disagree, and so does John Eastman.
Well, I will talk to John about it at the appropriate time, but I'm glad you called, Bill. I got to go to break. Always good to talk to you. 1-800-520-1234. Rick Grennell is next. America, stay tuned.
Don't forget to sign up for the Hugh-verse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.hughiverse.com.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
So now me at 27, I can now play historian. So let me tell you what's about to happen, okay?
Sure.
When Democrats have unified government, they're going to reach too big, and they're going to fail with a lot of it. We now have to pinpoint, though, what fights matter most. Number one, the continuation of the Electoral College. Number two, no more seats on the Supreme Court. Number three, no new states. Number three is the one that we really got to look out for. So if we're smart, we should go ask Joe Manchin right now on the record, do you support adding new states to the union? I have a whole very provocative argument that I think that Joe Manchin should run for Senate Majority Leader and all the Republicans should support him, therefore not allowing Chuck Schumer becoming Senate Majority Leader. So I'm going to come out with that publicly today. I guess I'm breaking it exclusively, Eric. I did come up with the idea, but it's actually so patently obvious. But then here's the other thing that's going to happen, Eric, is that we're going to start to get it's going to get worse before it gets better. They're going to crack down on us like never before. There's going to be a lot of indictments, investigations, deplatforming, censoring, loss of hope. And then things will, then we're going to have to rally and we're going to have to find some momentum. But for anyone who now says, well, the country is over, it's lost, then go to Paris. Okay. I have no time for you right now. Okay. I'm going to fight for every single inch of this country. And if you're all of a sudden going to be these people that there's a direct connection of the people that were dealing in hopium, like give me the hopium. And now the people that want nothing to do with it. It's over. It's done. Fine.
Yeah.
Go to Brussels. Okay. I want nothing to do with that. We got to fight.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
I watch a lot of CNN and MSNBC hee-haw, so you don't have to. I got the scars to prove it. Let me tell you something. Trump talked about the rally. He wanted people to come to D.C. Nobody said, uh-oh, 5 people are going to be killed because these guys are going to assault the Capitol building. Oh, my goodness. Nobody said that. The most severe, pathological, hateful Trump hater never said that. Nobody said that. How many Trump rallies have there been? When have you seen this? That's why they weren't ready. Didn't think it was going to happen. Hadn't happened before. And there is some evidence that some of the people there were outside agitators, infiltrators. Some. Don't know. We're still sorting that out. But at least one guy is a known Antifa, Black Lives Matter activist, violent guy from Utah. One of them. But people didn't anticipate this. Because heretofore, for the most part, the Trump rallies have been peaceful. And most of the people, again, there were peaceful. All of a sudden, the media has forgotten that term that they love so much called mostly peaceful. They've also forgotten that term they love so much called defund the police. Why weren't the police there? Why wasn't there more of a police presence? Remember that, was it the mayor of Baltimore who said, we gave the rioters space to destroy?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
You can concentrate, and should, on the terrible events of yesterday. But if that's all you think about, you will do the country no service. This country is completely divided. Something I've said we've been in a civil war. And I said for so long, we're in a civil war and only one side is fighting. For the last 4 years, Republicans have fought. Among the other consequences of yesterday's mob, and it was a mob in the Capitol, is the way in which, at least for the time being, history has a time of leveling things. The Donald Trump legacy has been smeared truly beyond recognition. I don't know whether the results, I have had the same position the entire time. I use the word agnostic. I don't know. The circumstantial evidence of cheating and the 100% moral defense of cheating
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I'm standing by for Ambassador Richard Grennell, former ambassador to Germany, former acting director of national intelligence. I've sent him a DM. Rick, where are you? And we're calling him. Are we still calling him, Adam? We are trying, and he's not picking up his cell phone. And I suspect very much Ambassador Grennell is in California, and it's 5:30 in the morning there, and that he's not waking up. Rick! I could yell. I don't think he'll. Rick, wake up! Don't hit the alarm. I've got a specific request from a listener. Rick Grennell, come on, Ambassador. So I just sent him a DM. I've sent him a text. Anybody who knows him, go over and knock on his door. That'll scare the heck out of him. Don't do that. But he's never missed before. But I know he's in California. It's 5:30 in the morning. Donna, I'm going to take your call even though you haven't been screed. I hope you're not crazy. Hello, Donna. How are you?
Hello.
Hi. Is this Donna?
No.
Who is it?
Michael.
Are you crazy?
Good God, I hope not.
Okay, because, when I take an unscreened call, it's always kind of risky.
Oh, I see. I was wondering why it wasn't.
Well, that's because we're trying to reach Rick Grennell, who's supposed to call me, and I might cut you off if he wakes up. But go ahead, Michael.
Okay, well, I was going to say the function and exclusive purpose of impeachment and trial is to determine whether grounds exist to remove a sitting president from office. And if the president's term of office has expired...
You just dropped. Yes, you're right. That's what Judge Luttig said. That's what I have said. That is what responsible constitutional scholars ought to conclude. It is not constitutional. All right, we'll roll the dice again. My heart, we're down to half staff because of COVID. Everybody's recovering. Dwayne is recovering. Ben is fine. They'll be back after their 2-week quarantine. But we're operating on half staff today, and so we can't both try and find Rick Grennell and screen calls. So I'm just going to roll the dice here and talk to Jim in Portland, Oregon. Are you crazy, Jim?
Hello?
Are you crazy?
Oh, no.
Okay,
no.
Good.
Is this you?
Yeah, I'm not screening calls because we're shorthanded.
Oh, I understand. I am against impeachment. I also think if the Congress was going to do this, both houses, decency says an impeachment trial defendant, he ought to have something that's fair and speedy also. I think they owe him that.
And well, that is, there is a deeply embedded in the American psyche attachment to due process. And although it is not specifically applicable to the impeachment article, there is an argument that the 14th Amendment ought to have changed impeachment proceedings to so include it. But the American people will judge. And I don't think they're going to judge well anyone who votes for impeachment today. Thank you, Jim. Stephen in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Hello, Stephen.
Happy New Year, Hugh. How are you?
Good, except I'll drop you if Grennell wakes up.
Well, he California, they move a little slower out there.
They do.
I can't tell you. But, hey, number one, congrats to the Browns. My Eagles out pulling from the Browns here. So that's number one. Number two, I think whatever the House does is a lot of theater. But more importantly, you mentioned, the fraud, not rising level of change of votes. How do we get rid of fraud completely?
Well, you would adopt the Israeli system. The Israeli system is the best voting security system in the world. And after 2000, I really thought Americans would wake up to the need to secure the vote. And I hope after this election, they realize the need to secure the vote. I'm not against absentee voting. I've used it for years because I've often been, the only time I haven't voted since being an adult is when I led a voting rights observation team on short notice to Mississippi in 1986, and along with OPM officers and Department of Justice lawyers who went down to Yazoo City because the Mike Espy election was underway, and I was in charge of that team. So it's the only time I've never voted, but I don't ever know where I'm going to be because I'm a journalist, and so I've always voted absentee, and so I believe in absentee balloting, but I just do not believe in the mail-out of unrequested ballots.
Absentees are different than mail-in.
Yeah, mail-out ballots, it's just the end of voter security and a continuing erosion.
What can we, your listeners, do in our respective counties to make that happen where there's...
You can't do anything in your county. You have to appeal to your state legislators. These are matters of state law. Voting security is a matter of state law, and if your state's vote is insecure, it's because of the people in your government who have made it so. Hey, Stephen, thank you. Bill in Western Pennsylvania. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, hi, Hugh. First of all, I wanted to ask you what your response was to the gentleman who called in and said that you should at least give ear to John Eastman. Because I have heard what he has said, and I was wondering what your response was. I'm sorry I missed it.
I will eventually have John on. I've had John on for years. John's probably been on this program more than any other program he's ever been on. He's the smart guy with Erwin Chemerinsky. So I will eventually have him on. But on this issue, I believe he agrees with me that impeachment is not only improvident, but unconstitutional.
Yeah, I agree with the impeachment assessment. Also, his assessment, what I was thinking with him, though, was his allegations of voter fraud seemed very credible to me.
Well,
and that's what I think the gentleman was referring to, was his allegations.
I don't know what John thinks about voter fraud. I think he believes there was a constitutional argument for summoning the legislatures, which I disagree with him on. And I'll be happy. I don't know what he said on Wednesday. I don't even know if he spoke on Wednesday. Did he?
He spoke on, I'm sorry, I don't remember which show it was. It might have been with, might have been Dennis Prager. I'm sorry, I can't remember. But the other issue I had is the constitutionality issue of the impeachment. Do you honestly, is it at least theoretically possible that the reason why they're doing this is spin to keep everybody's focus? Every conservative pundit has been talking about impeachment instead of, again, the issue of voter fraud.
Bill, there is no voter fraud rising to the level of changing even one state. It's been adjudicated. There's no need to talk about it. You can talk about election reform like I just did, but President Trump lost the election.
Okay, and that was one of the things that John Eastman brought up, was that it actually hasn't been adjudicated.
All right, I'll let John get to it, but it has been 60 times, and it's over. There isn't anything to do. Vice President Pence had no role. The Congress had no role except to debate and note objections to how the election was carried out. The Constitution assigns that job to the Electoral College quite specifically, with specific intent, to remove the Congress from anything unless separate slates of electors arrive, and that did not happen because there was no adjudication of an improvidently sent body of electors. Bob in Villa Park.
Hey, good morning, Hugh.
Morning.
Yeah, I don't know about all this stuff. I just feel that after 4 years of them trying to remove that man out of office and all the hatred that they had for him, I believe that the swamp and the crooked lawyers and everybody in that whole operation weren't going to let that man have a second term, no matter what.
Well, okay, I believe the election was lost by the president's election team, and they were definitely in the field against him, but it was a very close one thing, and he ought to have won. He ought to have won, but he was not denied that win by fraud. He ought to have won. It would have been better for everyone had he won, but he did not win. And I think
I can't believe they'd allow anybody to.
There is no they. There is no they there. There isn't an establishment. There isn't a conspiracy. America doesn't work that way. Chuck Colson once told me no conspiracy in America lasts longer than 3 days when it's conducted by other than mobsters, because no one is ruthless enough to do it. Hey, thank you. I want to get a couple more in. David, Western Pennsylvania. Hi, David.
Hey, Hugh. Thank you. First-time caller. Just very quickly, been thinking about this a lot and not taking a side one way or the other, but I wondered if you would speak to it. Thinking about our founding fathers who were willing to fight their cause to the point of shedding blood, and how that's different than what we experienced last week.
It's very different. The people last week have no legitimacy whatsoever, never made their case, assumed no Congress authorized them to move forward. The Declaration of Independence was preceded by the Committee of Correspondence, was preceded by remonstrations with the king to redress their grievances, and was argued out at length in the body of the Declaration of Independence. Last week was a mob, a group of criminals, a group of thugs who menaced the very government that the founders that you talked about put together. That's how it's different. Doug in Atlanta.
Hugh, I just wanted to ask, you're so emphatic about there not being any fraud, that it didn't rise to the level.
Stop, Doug. You're mischaracterizing what I said. There's always fraud in every election. There was not sufficient fraud to change one state's vote. The president needed
I thought
three.
that's what I said.
Okay, you said I didn't say there was any fraud. There's always fraud in every election. Honest to goodness.
Okay, I stand back. I stand
Right.
back. I'm changing my stance then. But what I would like to ask is why it would be a waste of time to get someone under oath in a public forum, to get multiple people under oath in a public forum, and just ask them the question. Say, this is what this looked like. Explain to me why not.
And Doug, it would not be a waste of time. If you were listening earlier when I had Congressman Gallagher, I suggested to him that he attach to his motion of censure a motion that a 9/11 style commission, nonpartisan, made up of respected people like Judge Littig, be impaneled to review the events of the 2020 election cycle, beginning with the widespread variation in voting procedures that were not preceded by legislative deliberation. I think that would be a very good thing.
Yeah. And would you follow this? Well, I mean, forget following the logic. This is my question. What if there were fraudulent votes cast to the tune of, say, 14,000 in Georgia, and therefore it's effectively a tie? I mean, if those are fraudulent votes, then how do you change the election by kicking them out?
Number one, Doug, you're asking a very complex legal question. I'll give you the quick answer. First of all, fraudulent votes may have been cast on both sides. I wish Republicans and supporters of President Trump would understand that fraud is nonpartisan. It could have been on both sides. It's very difficult to stop an election or change an election, as we saw in Bush v. Gore in the proceedings in Florida, because you have to disqualify ballot by ballot and then recount. And that's very difficult to do in one state, much less four. And to my knowledge, it's never been done when the margin is larger than 2,000 votes in any contested state. That's why it is not a useful exercise to debate this anymore. There was fraud, and it could have happened on both sides. but no one came close in any state to proving fraud of the sort that would have changed even one state. Thank you all. Rick Grennell, bad on you. I hope you're taking your relief factor and went for a run. We'll get him back tomorrow because I do want to ask him about the Nevada case. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. 1995 gets you started. Relief Factor gets you in the game. Relief Factor keeps you moving. Relief Factor keeps you healthy. Relief Factor is what tens of thousands of people use every single morning to make sure that their day is as pain-free as possible by supporting the temporary relief of the minor aches and pains by other than over-counter remedies. Do not stop taking anything your doctor prescribes for you, but do add Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega to the mix. I'll be right back. Ed Stetzer is a dean at Wheaton College, and he thinks evangelicals who supported Trump need to repent. We'll talk about it.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Law and order. I tell you what, it's law and order when you want to smear Republicans, but it's a peaceful protest when you're burning the city down for the devil.
Well, that's unfortunately, Lance, many of us know that exactly what you're saying, that is true. So the question is, what do we do? In other words, will we have the ability going forward to keep the republic? I mean, that's the question. I have said that if Biden gets in, either way, fraudulently or legitimately, he and his folks are going to take us down a path that destroys our ability to recover.
It is important that we, in our movement, recognize we are a movement, and that Donald Trump is willing to still lead that movement. And that movement is going to redefine politics in the Republican Party. And that movement is going to damage the Democrats. And what we must beware of is what happened yesterday cannot ever happen again. We can give them the gift of having us for a moment do anything that is unrighteous, because they could be unrighteous all day and will never call themselves out. But if they bait us into participating in something they do, it's us that's going to get in trouble. It's like the kid in school who knows how to do something bad, and it's always when turns around their straight face, and the goofy kid who participated, that's the one the teacher caught. That's us. So we got to start with, and I mean this sincerely, no violence, because they would love to come for the guns of lawful people, just like they want to come for the freedom of speech of God's most righteous people.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
I'm watching this thing, and I'm looking at this horrific scene of how these people breach the Capitol building, hoping nobody gets hurt, hoping the officers are able to maintain order, hoping there's no destruction of valuable, artifacts and things like that in that building. How this looks but from terrorists, they're saying how easy it is to breach. That's what I'm thinking about. It never occurred to me to go, you know what, Larry? I wonder what would have happened had these people been largely black people. I guess I had other things on my mind, but if you want to play that game, let's play that game. Holding in my baby brown libertarian fingers, article from the Wall Street Journal, April 27, 2016, headline: "This study found race matters in police shootings, but the results may surprise you." In the article, very detailed. I urge you to go get it yourself.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I'm joined now by Ed Stetzer. Ed is the dean of Wheaton College, and at Wheaton College, he also leads the Billy Graham Center. Dean Stetzer, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Thanks for having me on.
To let everyone know, we don't have to rush because I arranged for Dean Stetzer to join me at the end of my show so that we could have a long conversation. It's an interview, not a debate. And even though the show will go off, the conversation will go on. It will all be posted on YouTube and on my website. Dean, welcome. Your article in the USA Today, Evangelicals Face a Reckoning, Donald Trump and the Future of Our Faith, was sent to me by an old friend with whom I have deep disagreements on politics, and he urged me to read it, and I thought it was an interesting presentation of your position, so I appreciate that. Has it sparked a lot of interest?
It has. It was, I guess, their top headline for most of the day on Sunday, and I think part of it from people who maybe don't like evangelicals, and part of it from people who are evangelicals like me who are concerned about what evangelicalism has or is becoming.
So we share a common faith, even though I'm an evangelical Roman Catholic Presbyterian, which is neither here nor there. I'll explain it another time.
You're technically not supposed to be all those things at once. But
I know it doesn't make me a Lutheran either. It just means I go to Mass on Saturday and I go to the Presbyterian Church on Sunday. That practice has been blessed both by bishops, and I was an elder in the Presbyterian Church, not currently serving. So Ed, what I want to ask you at the beginning, in the article, you write that evangelicals believe in the good news of the gospel that Jesus died on the cross for our sins and in our place. Would you also add, and that he rose from the dead, ascended into heaven, and is alive today?
Indeed, I would. I believe that's central to the Christian faith, that Jesus was dead on Friday and on Sunday back from the dead, and receiving him by grace and through faith gives us new and everlasting eternal life. I
thought you might. It was just excluded from the USA Today article, and I thought to myself, hey, he left out the punchline, but editors are editors. Is salvation exclusively reserved for those who put their faith in the resurrected Christ?
I do believe it is. I believe salvation is by grace alone, through faith alone, and in Jesus' work alone. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
So I want people to understand you're very mainstream. Is sexual intimacy outside of marriage sinful?
Yeah, let me say mainstream is probably not the term to describe conservative evangelicals like me, but the answer to your question is yes. I believe God's reserved sex for marriage between one man and one woman over one lifetime, and I would be a conservative evangelical, yes.
Okay, so when was the last Republican presidential candidate you voted for?
I don't generally reveal who I voted for, but I have been consistently pro-life, pro-traditional marriage, pro-religious liberty, have deep religious liberty concerns now that, unfortunately, I think that President Trump's kind of erratic response over the last few weeks has led to the loss of the Senate. Now we're going to face serious religious liberty concerns related to the Equality Act and more, but in general, I don't tell people who I voted for.
Have you ever voted for a Republican president?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Okay. I just wanted people, I thought you were more Republican than you were Democratic, and therefore I thought your credibility with my audience might increase.
Oh, with your audience. Well, I would say it's very fair to say I believe that lower taxes are better for society. I believe, so I think they would very much line up. But kind of as a pastor and a religious leader, one of the things that, I teach and preach the Bible regularly is I don't want people to say, I didn't vote for that person, so I can't listen to that person. But I think you and I've listened to your show. I think you and I will be very aligned on most issues.
Yeah, and I do too, by the way. And my friend, who I'm aligned with on most theological issues, we just disagree on politics. That's why I wanted you to have a long setup, and that's why I'm going to ask you, again, this is for credibility with my audience and people who will go and listen to this. You already said that most evangelicals, me included in your article, are grateful for the Supreme Court justices he appointed, Trump, and for some of the religious liberty concerns he addressed. His anti-abortion stances surprised me again, surprised many again, me included, and for that I was thankful. You noted that. How important is the Supreme Court, Dean?
Oh, I think it's very important. As someone who's, to talk about life, one of the defining factors of my vote has to do with life and unborn life in the womb. And so deeply important. And I think ultimately that coming out of the Trump administration, I think in that article I mentioned that a lot of, he burned down the Republican Party. There'll be consequences for perhaps decades to come on what has happened to the Republican Party. And at the same time, I'm thankful for the three Supreme, and I should say publicly and vocally supported all three Supreme Court justice picks that he selected. And again, lots of other things. Again, I think part of the challenge is you can be deeply concerned about what President Trump has done to the country, and in my case, to evangelicalism, and be thankful for executive orders on religious liberty, as I am, and be thankful for Supreme Court. And let me just say, we're going to need a conservative Supreme Court, considering now, in part because of President Trump's actions, that the White House has been lost to the Republican Party and the Senate. Now you're going to have your one buffer on some of these religious liberty concerns will be the Supreme Court.
So, Dean, where I'm going with this is that I believe a lot of evangelicals will so value the religious liberty and pro-life and other matters that the president engaged in and proceeded to advance, that your arguments about the last 2 months will pale in comparison to the achievements that he accumulated, and whether or not those arguments that you made legitimately, they would never overwhelm. So that's why I was walking through these, not to interrupt you, but just to make sure that people understand you're coming from a position, I think, very similar to mine, and you view the Supreme Court as very, very important.
Yeah, far more important now than it was before the Georgia Senate elections as well, but very important in multiple ways. I believe that a significant number of evangelicals who love the Lord, to use insider language, who love the Lord, are deeply committed to the concerns about their faith. They voted and held their nose, in many cases, voted for President Trump because of the Supreme Court. Now, that's not based on our research at the Wheaton College Billy Graham Center Research Institute. That's not the primary reason. The primary reason most white evangelicals voted for President Trump is because they're Republicans. I mean, they want lower taxes. They want, they're concerned about law and order. Those are the things that show up in polls. But the Supreme Court would be probably more important to you and me than to most people, partly because we are in conversations like this. You're a commentator every day. I'm a commentator less occasionally. But in both cases, the Supreme Court is a major part of the things that we're talking about today.
And again, it's an interview, not a debate, but where I would end up on this conversation is I would vote for him again in 2016 and 2020 because I value so much the religious liberty and pro-life and foreign policy and defense spending positions of the president, that while I regret what happened on Wednesday greatly and believe it was improvident and reckless of him to make that speech, it does not overshadow, nor does your argument persuade, because of the significance of what has been accomplished, because of the defenses that have been erected for around religious liberty. Yeah. But again, very quickly, let me run through the other. Do you approve of the Abraham?
Can I make one quick thing, though?
Sure.
Because you said my argument didn't persuade. I actually think my argument was not that you shouldn't have voted for President Trump in the description of what you just said. I think a lot of good, very committed Christian people voted for President Trump because of the reasons you just said so. My concern is for those who have been fooled by conspiracy theories, who've rushed in and bought everything, had this full-throated endorsement, and didn't recognize the damage he was causing within evangelicalism and within this country. I've listened up to your show to know that doesn't describe you, but I want people to make sure my argument was not, therefore you should not have voted for the president. My argument was we're going to have a reckoning within evangelicalism because a lot of what has happened because of some people's full-throated support. They were misled and at times fooled that he was the person that they wanted when he, as a person, he wasn't that person. Whether the policies were good, which has been your position pretty consistently, is not the argument I was making, though I think it's an important argument.
And my response to that is that we can't have the reckoning you request without accurately and fully explaining to people what he achieved. That is, that if you're going to weigh the decision to vote for him in 2016 and 2020, one cannot weigh it without understanding what he achieved.
That's why I mentioned those things in the article.
I know, but I want to emphasize them for the benefit of the people who will get to hear your exposition at length, because we don't have to rush, as opposed to the article, which has a word limit. I want to emphasize the reckoning, the side that had to be shorted. You mentioned them, but rather quickly, because you had to get to your major argument about the reckoning. So again, back to the questions of policy. How important is concern for and the voicing of support for the Uyghurs who are in concentration camp and the people of Hong Kong who are being suppressed?
Very important to me. I mean, I've vocally spoken up about both and have lobbied members of Congress to do so as well in support of the president when he's done so.
And how important are Second Amendment rights?
Important.
How important is the First Step Act on judicial reform?
Important.
And how important was the destruction of ISIS?
Exceedingly important. I guess they're all, I mean, it's hard to grade these by levels of importance. They're all things that I would find to be important.
Now, I teach constitutional law. I'm off this year, but I teach constitutional law, and I am very familiar with the following cases. Earl versus Hobby Lobby, which is a 2014 case before Trump, Employment Division of 1990, which, of course, long before Trump, but during Trump, Trinity Lutheran Church, Roman Catholic Diocese of Brooklyn versus Cuomo, Our Lady of Guadalupe School versus Morrissey Baru, Masterpiece Cake Shop, Fulton versus City of Philadelphia, which is pending, Espinoza versus Montana Department of Revenue was last year. The religious liberty cases of recent years with the Trump court have been many and important. Do you agree?
For sure. I would also add in there Wheaton College versus the HHS, Little Sisters of the Poor, and several others.
You got me. Yeah, I was coming up to say, you know, Wheaton College is dependent upon this court.
Well, Wheaton College was dependent on this court, but Wheaton College has petitioned this court and then won and was part of pushing back on the HHA's individual mandate, particularly with abortifacient drugs.
And do you believe that had the Supreme Court's appointments of the 3 vacancies been made by Secretary Clinton, that Wheaton College's statement of faith would have been ruled illegal?
No, not ruled illegal. I think there would have been substantial consequences related to Pell Grants and related to accreditation, but I don't think you would have seen an illegality on statements of faith. I think it would have restricted Christian colleges and universities, which is what the Equality Act will do. Will restrict Christian college and university from accessing things that all taxpayers has access to, for example, like Pell Grants and subsidized student loans for their students.
You're right under the 2015 court, Ed, but had Secretary Clinton had 3 appointments, a radical Supreme Court.
For organizations to have faith statements?
Yes, I do. And I believe certainly that like Bob Jones and the civil rights case, you would lose your tax-exempt status for sure under
that's what I'm saying.
And I think it would have gone longer. I think it would have gone further. And some people will argue that's okay. By the way, I think Bob Jones is correctly decided. But it nevertheless, I want people to understand, so much would have happened to Christendom and to the ability to proclaim Christ as Lord under a Clinton court that they have to weigh this reckoning very carefully because they do not know what would have happened.
No, there's no question. And I would say, too, I don't think we're on the same page. I do think that even the most bizarre religious group in the most liberal state, like let's say California, people still have their faith statements. The question is not whether they can say what they believe. The question is will what they believe be allowed in a broader society? And I think that right now, evangelical beliefs under the Equality Act, which President-elect Biden has said he's going to bring forward, and has widespread support in the House and the Senate. Joe Manchin being among the few who says he won't support it. But if that passes, the Coalition of Christian Colleges and Universities believe that's an existential threat to the very existence of the mission of these colleges and universities. And that's why, for me, I expressed widely and vocally my concern about a Clinton candidacy, even the place where I ended up in some news stories about it, because I think ultimately Hillary Clinton very much worked to alienate evangelicals. It worked. She was very specific about the things that she would push forward, but I think it's also true to remember that, you know, the Joe Biden that you might, I was a Northeasterner, and the Joe Biden of 20, 30 years ago very much moved to the left during the primaries. And for example, I mean, his support of the Hyde Amendment was, well, if you go back long enough, he was pro-life. And so the Joe Biden today is not the Joe Biden of, 20, 30 years ago, was a moderate Democrat. The question is, how will he govern? And I think that's important to note. But I let me say again with you, I think you're saying, is the Supreme Court exceedingly essential to our society? And would there have been a serious consequences if Hillary Clinton had been elected president? Yes. I would also say that there were other options. Now, by the time you got to the main election, there weren't. But there were other options before that didn't have the same character issues. And evangelicals have always believed character matters. It mattered under Bill Clinton, and then suddenly it didn't matter as much. Well, I think as the Trump administration has kind of gone down in tatters here at the end, it's about character. And I would say that I would say you and I might have walked into the voting booth going in with the same set of concerns. And I'm not the constitutional scholar that you are. I don't teach constitutional law. I teach leadership and evangelism. But walk into the voting booth with the same concerns you have and have said, all right, we're rolling the dice here. This person says he's going to support many, which is one of the points I make in the article, many key evangelical concerns. But this person, even Pat Robertson, who's called very erratic and detached from reality, will this person cause substantial damage that would weigh our vote the other way? Here's what I would say. You and I might have come to different conclusions, but I think at the same time we need to ask the question, okay, why were so many evangelicals in full-throated? I didn't hear you saying, don't worry about what he says. I didn't hear you saying, don't worry about some of the erratic things he does. But I did hear some evangelicals and evangelical leaders say that. It was President Trump right or wrong. I think there's a reckoning why they were attracted so much to that.
Now, and again, it's an interview of you, not what I believe. What I want people to understand is that evangelicals, some of them, including me, and Roman Catholics, some of them, including me, and Presbyterians, some of them, including me, had no choice but to vote for Donald Trump because the presidential election is between two people, not five, and that the re-election has consequences that will be greatly injurious to the United States of America, religious liberty. And without religious liberty, we cannot proclaim the gospel. There are two primary issues, and I'd love your thought. The ability to proclaim the gospel, religious liberty, is equal to the protection of unborn life. These are the two things that the church is called to do. Do you agree?
The two things, I would say they're central and important among the things that the churches are called to do. But I do think that religious liberty and life are key, I would say very high on my list of two issues. But if you say just those two things?
Oh, no, not just. Those are the two things at which government interferes with our ability. We are called to feed the poor, to clothe the naked, to visit the imprisoned, and to do that. But the two things in which government can interfere with us.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, those are substantial places where government interaction can have an impact on the ability of the church to do what God has called the church to do, yes.
So I think a lot of evangelicals and a lot of Roman Catholics who are Orthodox and Mass attending have evolved into Republicans, not because they are in love with the world, but because they are in love with their mission. And so now to your piece.
Yeah, and I would say, too, that conservative Catholics vote pretty much like white evangelicals, and there's been a huge move. And it's not just that. The more religious you are, the more you go to church, the more likely you are to be a Republican. People are going to get mad because I said that, but that's just math. I'm not saying that everyone who goes to church is a Republican or everyone's a Christian is a Republican, but there's been clearly a reshuffling. If you meet a person who's an atheist, they're almost always a Democrat. Not always, but almost always a Democrat. That's just numbers. Don't be mad at me because of math. Math doesn't care.
Oh, you're right. And Dr. Mark Roberts, my friend and scholar, has told me of the work of a Baylor sociologist who says the greatest indicator of whether someone is a Republican is whether they will say grace in public.
Yeah,
and that's math.
I'm part of the Baylor Institute for the Study of Religion, and that comes out of their conversations there. Yeah, very much so. There is a very clear, not 100% correlation, but a very strong correlation. The only exception to that being African Americans, who break very, very differently and have done so historically.
Great. Now, where I want to go in your article is some statements of fact that you assert with which I disagree. He has burned down the Republican Party. Now, I have been a Republican my entire life. I've never not voted for a Republican for president, and my party's fine. Mitch McConnell is the leader of it right now, the most powerful Republican. Governors like Ron DeSantis and Doug Ducey, and senators like Tom Cotton, and former officials, soon to be former officials like Mike Pompeo, remain vital influencers of the polity, and the party is fine. It's not 1964 when it was almost destroyed.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of. I mean, I've talked to several senators and congressmen, and I think they believe that these last few weeks will have serious ramifications that last for years to come. So it sounds like we just disagree. I think the Republican Party that I hope we will see coming out of that is a Republican Party that is pro-life, is pro-religious liberty. It actually has and wants to work, as President George W. Bush and Marco Rubio and others did, on a well-thought-out immigration reform plan that speaks of immigrants and refugees with the kind of language that speaks of them as people made in the image of God, worthy and dignity and respect. Even when we disagree about levels of immigration or levels of refugees, I hope we even return to the historic levels of refugee resettlement under Reagan and under Bush and under Clinton and Obama that were so cut. So I do think that, I'm comfortable with burn down the Republican Party, but I do recognize that there's a whole lot of people that are still there making a difference. I'm concerned that 2 years from now, it's going to be a very different world.
And Dean, I believe all that. In fact, I'm probably more radical on immigration than you are. I would regularize everyone in the United States who does not have any violence, but I would build the wall. So I'm very Catholic on the social gospel. I was against
You are. That's kind of Catholic, yeah.
And I'm the separation of families at the border. I was the fellow who argued with Jeff Sessions that was wrong. I rebutted the president.
Vocal about that as well. Yeah.
But I just got to tell you, the Republican Party burned down is, pardon the phrase, incendiary. It may be damaged, but 2022 is going to be a very good year for Republicans, if history has any tell, and redistricting comes in. So it's going to be doubly good for us because I think we'll take the House back, and the Senate is more difficult. The map is more challenging, but I think burn down the Republican Party a lot exaggerated from what we are.
Fair enough. One clause in one sentence, I understand. I would say that he's done significant damage to the Republican Party, and many senators and members of Congress, I think, feel the same. But the language burned down. You don't like it, I get it. But one clause in one sentence in a bigger argument.
So then we want to go to the next one. Some of us were vocal, often and early, about the dangers of Trumpism. It was costly. Were you also vocal about all of the good things the president has accomplished and why people might have supported him and still would have voted for him again?
Yeah, I think that's why I'm probably maddening to a lot of people, is that kind of people who on the left get mad at me when I've been publicly supportive about each. I've actually written articles in national publications about each of the Supreme Court nominees. I've been. I think the role of the Christian is, and people may disagree, but I think the role of the Christian, at least in the Christian pastor, I'm a lot in a pastor role, is not to be a member of a partisan team, but think in terms of sports analogies, more like an umpire. I want to call and try to call balls and strikes, and this enrages people at times because when one day I'm pointing out that, for example, these words that come out sometimes of the president's mouth, and I address them and I write an article about them, and then I say, and boy, I'm super thankful that we have Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court. I think this has significant ongoing ramifications. Wrote 3 different articles in different locations for that. So, yeah, I think part of the challenge, Hugh Hewitt, and I think you, again, I don't want to be nice to you, because we're supposed to be having this, robust conversation, but I think you have intentionally not gone all in. My article is primarily about evangelicals who've gone all in, and yet, I think at the same time, we can both affirm things the president has done and be deeply concerned about things that the president has done. That's what I've tried to do. I think that's what often you try to do.
Well, my objection to the article, Ed, is that it was sent to me by a virulent Donald Trump critic who has broken relationship with me because of Donald Trump, wants to repair it, which I welcome, but he sent it to me as here, I told you so. And that what I think the Christianity Today editorial, and I've talked to the editor of the magazine about it, that was so controversial. I think what it has done has appeared to put evangelical Christianity on one side of this argument, which is a political argument, and that it is being used to condemn Christians who supported Donald Trump wrongly. That's my charge against the article, is that you have licensed anger against fellow believers.
Okay, well, let me tell you what I think I was hoping, and I think it accomplished, based on the response I've received. I think what it's accomplished is say, not all evangelicals believe the same way about the president. And part of what my hope is that we need to not see evangelicals, and it's really white evangelicals, and we're both in that, we're both white. It's to not see white evangelicals as a voting bloc of the Republican Party uncritical of Donald Trump. There are some of us who are leaders in evangelicalism who have significant concerns. Now, I didn't write the Christianity Today article on that, so that was Mark Gallagher. He was the outgoing editor at the time. But I do think the reality is that we need to have the maturity as a movement, as people of practicing faith, to say, you know what, there are some real concerns on this side. And I have some real concerns about the fact, many people of color in evangelical churches who see their churches embracing aggressively the president are asking, what does that mean for me long term? How do I fit into this? So I think ultimately, and I'm not saying you're not saying this, but and you're objecting to the article, I'm actually good with that. I knew you would. Happy to come on and have the discussion because I find you to be very reasonable in your discussions. But there's another reasonable side to this argument, that the consequences of voting for and the full-throated support my main concern, of a president who has walked through and dealt with some of these things so badly at times is actually going to have, and is continuing to have, implications on evangelicalism. And that's, so I don't, again, we'll give people an opportunity to say, look, I'm mad. Yes, I get it, but that's not all there
Dean,
is.
I'm not mad at you. I regret that.
Some are, though.
I regret that Mr. Galley and you did not, especially Mr. Galley, that Galley divided the church, divided the body by not recognizing that people of good belief and sound Orthodox understanding could vote for President Trump in good conscience. It is not Hitler in 1933.
So how many? I guess the question is how many paragraphs do I need to say that in an article? It's not about that, but I want to make sure that people understand that I think there are people of good character. So that's again.
I think it's one paragraph. I think it's one paragraph. Not that.
In addition, in an article, it's not about that.
No, I think it's a necessary paragraph in any Galley or Stetzer piece as to what evangelicals need to do, that it say many millions of evangelicals supported the president for the right reasons and can justify their support, and did not do so with hatred in their heart towards anyone or with any embarrassment to the church, and that their position ought to be respected and welcomed in the church. That's 2 lines.
Yeah, I've written that hundreds of places, hundreds of times.
I know, but it's not in this one, which is USA Today, which is being sent to me by people who do not believe what you and I just agreed on.
But let me say that one of the things I often say is I apologize that I couldn't deal with every topic, with every nuance, with every inclusion and every caveat in the way that someone wants in a 1,000-word article. But I think I've written lots on that, and even in that article have made sure that I articulate that in one paragraph. So I get, you would like to be 3 or 4 paragraphs.
No, I don't. I would like it to be conclusive. I wonder if you would agree with this, that millions of evangelicals need not repent of their support for Donald Trump, because it was providently taken and thoughtfully expressed and was consistent with the gospel of Jesus Christ.
You got a lot of caveats in there. Here's what I would say. Millions of evangelicals made what they thought was a hard decision, whether they had to vote for a candidate that intentionally was working against their values of life and religious liberty and more, and saw and thought through and even prayed through and made a decision to vote for Donald Trump that I believe they did with good character. They made the best choice that they could. They strategically thought that their vote might influence the Supreme Court or executive orders and more, and I do not stand back in derision or in any sense of condemnation towards them. I am concerned, as you know, about those who uncritically embraced, many evangelicals did so, uncritically embraced the president.
We share that concern. I believe simply that Christians of integrity could both support and not support Donald Trump, and Christians of integrity could support Joe Biden and not support Joe Biden, and Christians of integrity could have voted for Hillary Clinton. I believe that Christians of integrity have to divorce politics from Christianity. I mean, you have to live what your life is, but they can be sincerely Democratic or sincerely Republican.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think there are many people who, I know I was talking to an African-American pastor yesterday who sincerely voted the way he voted and explained to me his beliefs as to why, and I can respect him. And just what you described, I don't bring anything to or at you. I'm sorry your friend and you are having a conflict. For me, as I wrote, I don't believe everyone who voted for Trump was fooled or foolish, and Trump voters are not Trump. They're not responsible for all his actions over the past 4 years, but they are responsible for the ways they responded and for their own hearts. And that's what I think, and that's what I think about for all of us. So yeah, I don't.
Dean, you're
framing it a little bit in the sense that a friend who doesn't like.
No, I'm not. I'm about to come to how I'm framing it. I'm telling you why I got to it, but now I'm going to give it to you why I frame. I believe the president recklessly gave his speech, and that what happened was foreseeable. And he may be legally responsible for that foreseeable, and he may not, but certainly morally he is responsible for not thinking through the foreseeable consequences of his speech. Do you agree with me?
I don't. Yeah, all the nuances that I don't know. I do believe that President Trump's incendiary words had consequences.
And was it foreseeable by him? Ought he to have known what was going to happen?
Yes, I would think that he should have known that this was going to lead people to take unwise action. With all the details of what happened, I'm shocked by all the details of what happened, so I don't know.
I don't think he intended the Congress to be overridden. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
I hope that wasn't his plan. That would be that would change the whole equation.
But the likelihood of it happening he should have considered, will this get out of control? And once it began to get out of control, he ought to acted more quickly to condemn it.
Wholeheartedly with those sentences, yes.
All right. With that, because I come at this as a lawyer, Dean, do you think the consequences...
It is like talking to a lawyer. I like it.
It's the deposition. Do you agree that the consequences of your editorial are foreseeably divisive within the church?
No, I believe they're calling the church to account, and I believe that that's... Well, actually, I could say there'd be sometimes this might divide. I think it needs to lead to a conversation, and it needs to lead to some change in why so many people were so quickly drawn to a person of this character.
This is where we disagree, I think, and this is why I'm uneasy with your article, though less so because of the caveats you included at the beginning than with Mr. Galley's article, which I condemned wholeheartedly. That was intended to and had the consequence of dividing the church. Yours does not have so obviously that intent. In fact, I don't think you had that intent, but the inevitability of that division is just as inevitably divisive as President Trump's speech was inevitably incendiary, though it did not necessarily have the consequence. He did not intend the consequence that followed. Do you understand my objection?
I understand your objection. I would say it's an unfortunate confusion of categories. In my case, I think that what needs to happen is that some people need to know that there are evangelicals who have major concerns, and then within evangelicalism and without evangelicalism, we need to have a public conversation. That's what the title is. There's a reckoning. We need to have a reckoning. What went wrong? What was our place and part? What do we need to change inside the movement? And what I don't think they need to change inside the movement, I don't think the movement needs to say, well, let's all now become liberal Democrats, right? So that's not it. But again, in a 1,000-word article, here's where I ended it. We've reached a reckoning. What comes next will reveal where our trust truly lies. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to call evangelicals to a sense where character matters at a greater level, where at the same time we get more focus. So much of evangelicalism has been focused on political power. We get more focused on showing and sharing the love of Jesus to a broken and hurting world. That's our passion at the Wheaton College Billy Graham Center. That's our passion in most of our churches. And for most churches and pastors, they think that the pursuit of power in this administration has caused some damage inside their congregations and inside relationships. I don't think it's divisive to point out the division and the brokenness that's there. I'm looking to work together to fix it, and I think there are a lot of evangelicals who want to as well.
So, Dean, you concluded the article with, will we look inside and repent when needed? That's a good question to ask. My question to you is, will you examine the editorial that you wrote at the time that you wrote it and consider whether or not it divided the church and incited anger among the body, and repent if indeed it did?
Always open to seeing what I could do and I could do better. And I would say a similar question to you, my friend. Would you not acknowledge that there are significant difficulties and, might I say, significant faults within the evangelical church that engaging and embracing this administration has brought to the light? And if so, consider joining me in speaking out and saying, how can we walk through this better to be a more gospel-centered, biblically driven movement that I think God calls us to be?
Yes, I will. But I do believe that, as I have been throughout the Trump administration, when someone parts with a political party of which they are a member, as, for example, on child separation at the border or the president's attacks on judges or his cruel tweets, they have to speak it in a timely fashion so that it be noted, which I have always consistently done, but that I've always tried to do that without damage to the body by recognizing other people might disagree with me about the need, for example, even family separation, which I found to be perhaps the most indefensible of all Trump policies. But I can understand that some Christians believe the exigency of the circumstances of the border required it because of coyotes and people falsely being claimed as children who were in fact being abused. I know the arguments. I'm always open to learning, but I don't want to divide the body because the world is against us right now. And this culture is going to crush us, Dean.
Yes, I think we're coming up to a real reality check, and I think part of that's a reckoning. But I think ultimately we do need each other, but we don't need each other to not speak truth to one another. And I think you have a habit of speaking truth, and you want to speak truth. And I appreciate the fact that you caveat things just as I sought to caveat things. I think the truth that I'm bringing forward is I think that we need to have a hard conversation on why so many leaders were co-opted, why so many evangelicals were well, again, quoting Chuck Colson in the article, very few were more easily impressed than religious leaders. When he was working for Nixon, his job was to kind of persuade special interest groups. Again, very few were more easily impressed than religious leaders, the very people who should have been immune to the worldly pomp, seem the most vulnerable. If we can't say that to one another, that there has been and needs to be a reckoning, and as this administration ends in tatters, that relates to evangelical witness and reputation, I don't think that's a realistic engagement of the current cultural moment. I think we need to acknowledge where we failed and then pull together for the sake of the gospel. That's been my lifetime of ministry, and this one article is calling out this moment that we're in to hopefully get us back on the mission we're on.
So, Dean, my last word to you, and I'll give you the final word because you're my guest. I knew Chuck Colson. Chuck Colson is a friend of mine. I worked for Richard Nixon. He was a friend of mine. I understand Chuck's point of view very, very well. I think he would object to your use of it at this moment. However, the incendiary remark, it's not in tatters. It is not in any way delegitimize the support of Donald Trump or of Mike Pompeo was on my show yesterday, a great evangelical man defending religious liberty as we speak and arguing for the natural rights theory of history and arguing for religious liberty and arguing for the people of Hong Kong and China and the Uyghurs, that it's not in tatters, that one has to say you cannot judge backwards by one event because that is not how history works. I'll let you have the last word.
I didn't say his legacy was in tatters. I think there's parts of it that'll be good. I said the Trump administration is in tatters, and if we don't agree with that, I'm not sure we're watching the same current events unfold right now as Republicans are now moving over in some cases to support impeachment and more. I mean, the administration is in tatters, and I think my concern is that evangelical Christians need to recognize that this was not their only hope. Jesus isn't coming back riding on Air Force One, and when he comes back, he's not riding on a
course. Let's extend this one more round, because I don't want people to misinterpret tatters. It's a very bad week for President Trump, and his legacy has been deeply injured and will be debated, and it will never escape this week. A history of Donald Trump will always be accompanied by this. But the people who work for him in good faith, who have done good things, ought not to be pursued with a condemnation or a vengeance on the heart as is happening. And indeed, it is time for Christians to stand up for those people who have done good things and defend them against the virtual mob, which is now attempting to purge them. As, for example, Elise Stefanik has been purged from Harvard because she wanted to air objections in a constitutional fashion on the floor of the Senate. In other words, this is being leveraged as a purge moment, and Christians now need to stand with their brother and sisters in faith and defend them.
Okay, I agree. That's a little different than what we were talking about a minute ago. I do agree. There are good people who, and I know several members of the cabinet. Sonny Perdue is a wonderful, man, and well, we could list several of them.
Ben Carson, you got it. Yep. Mike Pompeo.
Yep. So again, I met Mike. No broad condemnation from me that anybody that worked with the Trump administration is complicit. Again, even Trump voters are not Trump. People who tried to do good in the midst, and it's interesting to watch how the mainstream media, Sessions, you mentioned Sessions was bad guy, then he left and he's a good guy, then he's back in the grace and he's a bad guy. And I would just say that you can't base everything good guy, bad guy, whether or not the people in mainstream media are excited about this person because they're currently being critical of President Trump.
Now, can I extend this for a little bit more? Because now we're on the president. I am not in a position to judge the president's heart. And I am not in a position to judge the president's motives. That's an old teaching of the Catholic Church. Nobody knows but God how someone stands with him. And I am not going to sit here. I'm going to condemn his action on Wednesday as improvident and reckless. But I think he has done his best to be a good president as best he saw. And that I don't doubt his sincerity in trying to do, and that he did many, many good things. I'm not going to go through the historical idiocy of comparing him to Stalin and Hitler like people have been doing. He's not that. He's made mistakes. He's just another human being.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, we are far afield from the original conversation, but I think we're a good conversation just here, so that's all good. Again, the question was, are we going to tar and feather everybody who supported the president? And I'm going to be the one. I'm going to be one who consistently defends evangelicals who made a thoughtful choice. I'm going to be one who says when evangelicals didn't make a thoughtful choice, we need to ask the question why. And, the conspiracy theories that have become so widely bought up within evangelicalism and more. My article was about we need an evangelical reckoning. There's some soul and heart work and some relational rebuilding that we need within the movement. I'm there for it, and I'm guessing you're going to be there for it. I think it ultimately matters. But to not acknowledge, in my view, to not acknowledge some of the substantive issues, and I might say some of this often frequent naivete that was evident in our movement is not treating it well, honestly, and fairly. So I think we can do two things at once here. I think we can work towards unity in the movement. There are all kinds of things going on behind the scenes right now. That's what you're calling for. Let's not over-critique or over-criticize one another. And we can say there are things that need to happen, and the language I'm using is there's an evangelical reckoning, and we need to walk through that together.
I 100% agree. I believe it is among every evangelical has to reflect on their own conduct vis-a-vis the church and politics and ask, what might I have done better to more persuasively argue on behalf of the gospel?
I'm with you.
Thank you, Dean.
Good to talk to you.